I've made it. I'm officially on YouTube. I think it's loading up still. We've been joined by J.O. How are you this afternoon, my friend? Oh, it looks like he's not at the camera. Isaac, what's going on? Okay. Cassandra, how are you?
I'm sorry, I had the mic on. How everybody doing?
Very well, very well.
Sorry.
Okay, all right. Josh, how are you this afternoon?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good.
Good, good. Duran, how are you this afternoon?
What's happening, man? I'm doing very well. Hello, everyone. How are you, man?
Whoo, boy.
Ron?
I am experiencing.
Good, man. I'm good.
Oh, yeah.
Good. Went down to the beach for a couple of days.
Oh, yeah.
Needed that.
You said you're.
Are we starting the discussion?
Yeah, just an influx and an overload of information. I'm able to handle it, but other things have to be adjusted, of course.
Right.
And like I said, unfortunately, because of all that information I'm taking in, I actually did not get to finish step 5, an initiation into hermetics. But I have a great feeling that I'm not the only one. But we most definitely will cover Binah today. I took a lot of notes, and that was again a pretty interesting, profound chapter. So
Yeah,
hope you guys.
regarding Binah.
Well, I see you got your notebook up and on.
Yeah. So in the verse 4, it is talking about that the pure form of energy in Chokma. We have to and then later in the point it mentions that directly from subconscious or like artistic genius or buoyancy, this method is used. So in this, are they referring to the force from Chokma or all Sephira, or just Chokma? I was confused regarding that.
Okay, hold on. I'm just sending a link here on the website so people can know that we're on, and then I'll just give me just 2 more minutes. Damn, it's been 25 minutes. I swear time just flies by. Okay, all right. So, Binah. We are talking about Binah today from the Mystical Kabbalah. And what was your question about that particular verse that you said?
Fourth verse. In this, they are talking about that we should the method should be used directly of the subconscious, and the method which occurs in artistic genius. So, are they talking about the energy from Chokma or from all Sephira or Sephirot?
If that's the verse that I'm thinking of, she was talking about in particular how the expression of energy coming out of stability represents Chakma. Do you remember which verse that was?
Are you finished? Yes, I am. Okay, then I will.
Stability.
So that you won't be able to talk about me.
Later. I didn't have a doubt of that as well. I think it was the 7th verse. 7th verse it was. I couldn't understand that verse as well.
Yes, she does. She said it right about things.
Seventh verse it was. I could.
All right, all right. Greetings to everybody in the chat.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
What up? I can't hear you. Maybe I lost the signal, but I cannot hear anything. Let me just be driving. Because I'm driving anyway, so probably that's the signal.
Okay, so I think one of the most interesting concepts about Binah happens in verse 6, where she's really just explaining and describing how the universal energy moves in a spiral, right? You know, a lot of people have talked about that, but there's really no clear explanation as to what they mean. But what she talks about here is how within Kether is a stabilized force, and the first expression of this force as it moves, the masculine principle, that is chakma. It's moving out and it's a line, but nobody said it was a straight line. Because even Einstein talks about how when energy is expressed forth, it actually moves in an arc, and the curve is as wide as the entire universe. So as this force moves, at some point, eventually, it's going to come back to its origin. You see what I mean? So it's not a straight line, it's actually a curve, and it's going to come back to the starting point. And this is what this kind of relates to when we talk about vibration and waves and things like that. But anyways, because the universe is in time, because it's moved out of Kether and into Chakma, because we're in the realm of action, by the time the energy comes back to that point, it's actually on a higher arc. You see what I'm saying? So it's not a circle, it's a spiral. So as the clock spins, the zodiac wheel spins, it doesn't come back to the same exact point. It comes back to the same general point, but on a higher level. So that's what we have in Binah. So Chakma is the expression of the energy. Binah is the receiving of that energy and the pulling of that energy that makes it come back around in a circle. So once it reaches that completion, once it goes back to its starting point, there is a form of stillness there. There's form, right? That's why form happens, because that energy is now completed. It's gone in its full cycle. It's made its path around the universe and it's back again. At that stabilized point, that's where we have form. That's where manifestation begins to happen. Why? Because that's the completion of a pattern. That's the completion of a cycle, right? So while Chakma represents the expression of force, Binah represents the completion of that expression. That's why when you look at a sine wave, you don't look at the whole wave, you find where it begins to repeat itself. So it goes up and then down, and you want to look for that point where it starts to come back up again. So that's the completion of the cycle. It's just expanded. But yeah, when you zoom out of that circular motion, it actually makes a spiral. Does that make sense so far? Or am I talking craziness?
Repeat what you said about chokma. Is it the expression of force you said?
Yes, Chakma
And-
is the expression.
Okay.
Binah is the reception.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, Binah being the feminine, it's the reception of that. And that, like I said, that's what makes it a pattern, because it brings it back to the starting point. So if you could, I know you've seen a visual like this before. I didn't get a chance to pull up a video, but If you would imagine like something going in a circle, like a little line going in a circle, but instead of coming back to the starting point, it's also moving upward. So that circle is now a spiral and it's spiraling. You got that visual?
Yeah, we got it. Or I
Okay, so
have.
the
Yeah.
concept of that pattern itself, that is
Like
the
the Nautilus?
stability.
Kind of like the Nautilus?
Yes, yes. So when you zoom out and look at that nautilus, when you zoom out and look at that spiral pattern, that pattern is the form. It's now creation. It's essentially dead when you think about it, because now you know the predictability of that energy. The expansion of Chakma is, it's random, it's volatile, it's uncontained, it's wild. But the fact that we can now see a pattern in its movement, we see order in the chaos, it's no longer chaos, it's now order. And that is the death of form. It's now in a concrete form that we can visualize. So that this is what makes Binah the giver of life, but also the giver of death, because it's putting it into a form. When it's constrained like that and constricted like that, it's no longer volatile and random. It's no longer pure Chakma. It's now Binah. So when you look at it that way, it's in a state of equilibrium. It's finished, it's done, it's completed. We know what's going to happen. But the fact that the universe continues to move on means it's not dead. So why is that? Because Kether is continually unmanifest. It's continually, Chakma is continually pouring forth from Kether. So the process continues. It doesn't stop. As long as there is Kether, there will be Chakma coming out of it. There will be explosive energy coming out of it. As long as there's explosive energy, there's going to be pattern for that energy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where we get the whole concept of the masculine and feminine energies of the universe. The explosion and the reception of pattern. And that's where she talks about the atoms, the basic building blocks, the units of life. The atom atomic energy, it's actually, they say they don't know if it's a particle or a wave or both. Well, that's what's going on here. The wave is expression of energy, but we can locate the pattern, we can locate the beginning and the end of the cycle. So therefore, it's not random wave anymore. We can now perceive it. And it's that stability that we're able to perceive. That is the force of Binah.
Okay. So is the same thing they are talking about in seventh point as well? Yeah. Yeah, it's now clear.
That's the same point we're talking about in verse 7, you said?
Yeah. You have just explained it only.
Yes.
Mm. But in fourth point, what are they talking about? Which method are they talking about?
Which matter are they talking about?
Method.
Which method?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
They are talking about some method of channeling energy, probably from the subconscious, or like the pure energy, which is like not in any shape or form.
Where's that at?
Fourth point.
Number 4?
Yeah.
I'm mad.
Okay, so yeah.
It says
talking about-
this method is a
Yeah, they're talking about
the method
something.
of self-defined, which it pursues automatic.
Yes, this is being recorded, Duran.
You talking about at the bottom of the page, the last paragraph, talking about the method. So,
Okay. So yeah, essentially, I'll just read number 4. Number 4 states, it must be remembered that the Sephirah are states and not places. Wherever there is a state of pure, unconditioned being without parts or activities, it's referred to as Kether. Thus, in these 10 pigeonholes of our metaphysical card index system, we can sort out our ideas for the whole of the manifested universe without the necessity of removing any object from its place in nature as it appears to our understanding. In other words, wherever we see pure energy functioning, we know that the underlying force is that of Chakma. This enables us to see the intrinsic identity and type of all manner of phenomena, which at first appear entirely unrelated. For we learn by the Kabbalistic method to refer to them according to their type to the different Sephiroth, thus enabling ourselves to link them up with all manner of cognate ideas according to the system of correspondences explained on a previous page. This is the method of the subconscious mind, which it pursues automatically. The occultist trains his conscious mind in the use of the same method. Incidentally, we may notice that whenever individuals are working directly off the subconscious, as occurs in an artistic genius, in lunacy, and in the dream state or trance, this method is used. So this method that she's talking about is a method of correspondence and abstract relation, a method of communicating with symbols, right? This is the method that the subconscious uses to speak. We don't sit, your subconscious mind doesn't operate like the conscious mind where we have to sit here and talk and discuss. The subconscious mind sees the symbols and understands what the symbols represent. The track and the trick and the trap of the conscious mind is that when we see something and experience something or read something, we think that that is the only solid, firm definition of it. It's very fixed, very absolute. But when we use our abstract mind, we see symbols and we know that it could mean this or that depending on the context. So the method she's talking about is being able to effectively read and observe symbols and knowing that the definition of it is based on the context.
No, thank you.
What was that?
Oh shit, sorry, I'm not muted. My bad.
What's up, George?
What's up?
So that's the method that she's talking about there, the method of the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
Being able to look at the symbol and observe it and knowing that based on what's going on in the now, that's what the symbol means.
Okay.
For us to
Yeah, I
say,
got it.
oh, Saturn and Binah represents the devil, Saturn and Satan is the devil. If you just stay there with that concrete, fixed, logical definition, you're going to miss 99.9999999% of the meaning of that abstract symbol. That is one definition in context. It can mean so much more. It's also the mother, right? It's also death with the scythe. And the
Life giver.
it's also Saturn. It's also the life giver. It's so many things, but it's based on the context. And that's why she says the occultist trains his mind to think in this way. Basic people are trained to just look at something and make a snap judgment, and that's that. Us as
What
occultists,
would be an
That's my
example?
thinking.
heard two people say something.
So what would be an example of how you train your mind for this method?
A good example of training your mind for that method would be the ability to observe, perceive, and experience something without making an immediate judgment. Why? Because when you're able to live life and experience a thing without judging it right off the bat, you open your mind to really let things play out, let the cycle rotate, let the pattern move so that you can see the end of it. Most of us make judgments before we see the end of it. This is why people feel like, oh, I failed, or oh, I'm depressed, or oh, I'm experiencing anxiety, and all these different things. It's because we're making judgments before the cycle is completed. How do you say that you're a failure if the cycle isn't done, right? How do we know that, why do we get so anxious and scared and worried about what may happen? The process isn't finished yet. How dare we make a judgment? So that's an example of how to train your mind by not judging the scenario. Let it play out before you make a judgment. That's a real life example.
Wait. And I have a doubt in 17th verse as well.
Thanks.
They're talking about the idea of faith. and I
Yeah,
couldn't understand it in respect to Bina. I'm just not able to understand this one.
I really enjoyed that one. That was a really good explanation of faith.
Yeah.
So most, again, back to making snap judgments in the general public. Most people, when they think of faith, they think faith is for the, well, not most people, but non-religious people think that faith is a thing for the ignorant. They think that having faith is for people who are blindly following God or some religion. But that's not necessarily the truth in all cases. Maybe in some, but not all. What this verse is referring to is that faith is related to experience and wisdom. How oftentimes the older folks who have been in the church for a while or in the religion for a while, when they talk about having faith and trusting in God or the divine or whatever, they're not just saying that out of blind following. They're saying that because they've experienced experiences in their life where if you wait to the end of the thing, you'll see it works out. The real faith isn't in just hoping and saying positive affirmations for no reason. You know, it's saying that because you understand that the story isn't over, it's still being written. What does she say here? But in the light of that consciousness, we may define faith as a conscious result of superconscious experience, which has not been translated into terms of brain consciousness, and of which, therefore, the normal personality is not directly aware, though it nevertheless feels, possibly with great intensity, the effects and its emotional reactions are fundamentally and permanently modified thereby. What does she mean by that? So she's essentially saying that when it comes to faith, it's you just know. You might not be able to consciously explain it, but you know things are going to work out. You know that what you're hoping for is actually going to come to pass. You just know it. You're not praying blindly. You know from past experience with working with the divine or, you know, with God or whatever. So that's what she means by it's a result of the superconscious experience, which hasn't been translated by the normal brain, right? You might not be able to tell somebody exactly why you have faith. You just know. You just know. That's a big difference from just somebody believing just because someone told them to or they think it's the right thing to do. Does that help?
Yeah, very much. It was just a long sentence which I couldn't comprehend in one go.
Yeah, it was.
And then I think it's word 29.
29.
It's talking about alternating polarity on
Mhm.
all planes.
Yeah.
So I got confused whether it's like polarity is alternating at every sephira or it is alternating between like words like it was earlier discussed in earlier chapters, or polarity just on every plane polarity changes with context. I want to ask that.
There you go. You already got it. You're listening. So basically, yeah, that's the thing. We understand the basic principle of the masculine and the feminine. It's nothing to do with penis and vagina, but those are symbols of that expression of energy. So what she's talking about here is that throughout the universe and the multiple planes, all things express both polarities depending on the context. The only place that doesn't really happen is on the physical plane. So since we are incarnated on this physical plane, we see the law of gender as fixed, concrete. But in ultimate reality, gender is not fixed and concrete. Gender, it takes the form that it needs to for whatever relationship it's in. That doesn't happen on the physical plane, so we don't have that in our definition banks. But I mean, you just got to think, if you exist in a place that isn't based on form, how can something be just masculine or just feminine? I think she pretty much summed it up in another sentence. Let me find it here. There we go. She summed it up in number 32. If you look at number 32, she says that each Sephiroth is negative in relation to the one above it by which it is emanated, and positive in relation to the one below it in which it emanates. And here's where she clears it up. This gives us the key. We are negative in our relationships with that which is of higher potential than we are. And we are positive in our relationships to that which is of lower potential. Boom. That right there should clear it up. Come into a scenario with an energy, a potency, a person, a situation, or whatever that is higher than you, more powerful, more influential, more abundant. In any respect, if you come into a scenario where you're experiencing something that is of a greater magnitude than you, by default, you're in a negative position. You're in the you must receive, you must concede, you must submit to it. Likewise, if you experience a situation, a scenario, a person, or whatever that is of lower magnitude, lower potential, lower status, by nature, you're positive to them, you're influential to them, you're in a masculine position to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect.
So everything in the universe, it takes the position that naturally it needs to. It's not even a choice. It just happens. If you go to school and you're sitting there in the classroom, you have to sit there and get taught by the teacher. Likewise, if you're, say babysitting a bunch of little kids, it's your responsibility by default to, keep them in check.
Yeah. True.
So even on the earth plane, no one is in one position all the time. Doesn't even make sense. It alternates based on context.
Perfect. And in verse 35th, it is talking about that marriage is of 4 quarters rather than 2 halves. It's of 4 quarters. And I couldn't understand what 4 quarters they are talking about. Some temples, some pillars, and some, I don't know.
When she's talking about those 4 quarters, she's talking about the physical and the emotional / mental. So the example she gives is that the man and the woman, on the physical plane, the man fills up the woman and the woman receives, but on more of the man takes more of a feminine role because he receives emotional support. He receives things that his non-physical nature must be feminine to, according to the female, and vice versa.
Okay.
Female receives man, but gives to him on the higher plane. So when it's talking about those 4 quarters, it's talking about the physical aspect of giving and receiving and the mental emotional aspect of giving and receiving. You feel me?
Okay.
So in
Yeah.
relation to the tree itself, it would be, so for instance, Geburah would be a negative relation to Binah.
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, Chasad would be a negative relation to Chokmah. So like, since they're directly below each other.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then in 40th verse, they are talking about that total depression or expression is like not necessary for the magical working. So how should we achieve the middle path if total expression or total depression is not the actual way, not the right way?
Could you ask that question again, maybe in a different way?
Like total depression or expression is not necessary for magical working.
Okay. Yeah, I think you might have gotten that out of context. Basically, what she's talking about here is there's, I guess, a fallacy when it comes to spirituality that in order to be holy and sanctified, you gotta be celibate or not
Celibate,
sexual.
ascetic.
Right. But basically what she's saying is that being celibate and being prude, like, oh, don't talk about sex or I'm offended and all that stuff, that's equivalent to being oversexed and lustful and wild out here. It's the equivalent because they're imbalanced. What she's saying is to really be effective, to really make ascension, to really make progress, you got to have these things in balance. Your sexual nature must be expressed because it exists within you and it's part of this cosmic scheme. But it just needs to be balanced. It can't be overexpressed or underexpressed. All these
Balanced expression.
balanced expression, exactly. All the Sephiroth have a vice and a virtue, just like all the chakra points can be overstimulated or understimulated. They all must be balanced.
Yeah.
There's an overstimulation or understimulation in one of these energetic centers makes an imbalance in the corresponding center. So as she stated here, in Binah, the virtue is silence, right? That's where we get the magical strength of silence, to know, to will, to dare, and to be silent. But if that is overexpressed, as in, you know, oh, now we got secret societies, now we are hoarding and keeping information and not giving it to people, even when it should be given, even when it can help. When we're just keeping it secret and hidden from people for no reason other than just because, that's when it becomes imbalanced. And by nature, that creates the chesed element, right? The next sphere. This is what happens. This is why the spheres are emanating, because they fill up to the point that they become imbalanced. Then the next energy must express itself. So when we think of chesed and Jupiter, that's talking about expansion, right? Jupiter, it's the vibrancy, it's the giving, it's the overabundance. So the fact that people have been secretive with the occult information and kept it hidden and hoarded it and all that stuff for the past couple hundred years, since that has happened, by nature, there's now an influx of this outpouring. This is why the Aquarius age has now happened, because the Pisces age deals with hoarding up and keeping all this stuff locked inside. And that was Binah. But now we're in an age here with the internet, and all this information is being poured out more than you can handle, really, right? I got stacks and stuff. I may finish next year, 2 years, but we exist in a realm of abundance now, because the Binah element has been going for so long imbalanced. But once that abundant age, once that is going on for too long, right, Aquarius, it moves into the age of Aries, ruled by Mars. So if we have too much chesed, that has to be regulated by Gibra, which is Mars, which is the slicing, the cutting, the warfare. You feel me? And once that gets out of control, now we get the tip rest. And this is how the energy spirals from left to balance to right, to balance to left, to balance to right. It goes in a spiral.
Hey, peace, Trash.
Peace.
So do you think, as it said, everything is necessary, all things are permitted? So with that, what you just said, it's necessary for off balance to exist. It's necessary for negative, in a sense, to exist, because without that, there would be no need for a balance, because balance means that there has to be two polarities that come together to make one system of a whole. So as you just explained, that with Binah being the way that it is, it expresses the next force. So I think that by the systems becoming, as in the past, the secretive societies and things like that, it was necessary for it to come to that, because nature already knows. Whatever we denote the supreme consciousness is, it already has the beginning and the continuation of life exists in the wholeness of nature. So there is no mystery to nature with itself. It's only a mystery to us, the human animal, in our thinking, that we have to, we discover something and then we take it away from somebody else, because now we go into our own self of being protective or secretive, or I want this all for myself because the power is so fulfilling.
Yeah.
So I see it, as we get those, we get those phrases, all things are necessary, everything is permitted, because there would be no balance for positive if it wasn't a negative. Neither one would exist. We would be back in Ein Sof of undifferentiated energy that has no need for form, explanation, and and projection.
Yeah,
Yes.
I wanted to piggyback off that too, about what I told you when I was keeping that thing from my boyfriend. Like, as soon as I told him, like the next day when I went to go buy groceries, that homeless guy, you know, was standing in the parking space I wanted to get to, and he kept playing me like, "Can you buy me this meal?" And after that, "Can you get me this from there?" And it's just like I felt like I had to, like I said, repent in some way from you know my silence, and like that actually makes sense. Actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah. So when we talk about, practicality and how does this relate to my real life? This is just a bunch of mystical shit. No, even as you just said there, we're looking at the we're looking at how energy moves in the universe. And when you're able to make connections like you just did, when you're able to make the connection of how this energy is moving to your everyday life occurrences, you're seeing the underlying energy of the universe. You're seeing the mechanics of the universe, how it relates. You're starting to see now on that Yetzirah plane, on that astral plane, the plane of these patterns, of these cycles. You're looking at the code of the matrix. And that's why this stuff is so important. Because if you're able to see the patterns in your everyday life, that means you can start to manage it, if that's what you want to do.
Because you can be out of control if you want.
Oh yeah.
Do as thy will. You know, if you want to be out of control, get lit, get turned, and be totally out of control. But if you want to be in control, then you'll find your whatever the essence is to you within that. You know, I think that once because like on what we're discussing, Bina, Kether, Shakma, and Bina, those are realms that we don't even exist in. We're really trying to explain something that we really can't grasp a full understanding. We can get a comprehension of it by of a particular study, but when it comes to those levels, we've fallen, so to say, from grace so far down into this physical body that we gotta fight that energy to try to get back up there so we can become one with that feeling again, with that experience again. So that's why we have to go into our ethereal or the vital body, or and then go into our atomic body or our astral body, because our physical body is not going to vibrate high enough for us to actually get that divine emanation, because those three spheres are the supernal sphere. Those are divine vibrations. So we would have to let go of so much of what we begin to comprehend. And once we fold into that type of an understanding of that level of emanation, we'll have to learn a whole nother level of tree to understand exactly what that's talking about. So we're basically trying to understand our physical tree so we can once again flow into our supernal higher sphere tree, so to speak, if
Yeah. And this
the draft freeze.
the next day. And it's actually pretty dreadful. But if you look at life as a spiral, I think that gives you a little bit more hope. Spiral nature of time is reflected in Bina, because we talked about the starting point and then it moves around and it comes back, but at a different arc. So it's moving, but it's moving in a predictable pattern, meaning you can manage it. Every single day, the sun is going to come up and go down, and the moon's going to come out, unless it's, the moon goes on its own cycle. But it's the same day. You just have a different opportunity to do more or less of what you want. In number 13, she says, to it, all of the Sephiroth are holy. Malkuth equally with Kether, and Gibberah, the destroyer, with Chesed, the preserver. They're equal. It recognizes that rhythm is the basis of life, not a steady forward progress. So life is rhythmic. It's not just a steady motion. It's rhythmic. And that's the lesson of Binah. It's a cycle. It's a rhythm, left, right, left, right. And there's a balancing in that rhythm. She says, if we understood this better, how much suffering we should save ourselves. For we should watch the Chakma and Binah phases succeeding each other, both in our own lives and in the lives of nations, and would realize the deep significance of Shakespeare's words when he says, there's a tide in the affairs of men, which, when taken at the flood, leads on to a fortune. That takes the unpredictability out of life. That should take some of the anxiety out of life, because there are patterns in life. If you just learn to notice these patterns, they become manageable. But to live in a wild world where you don't know what's going to happen, or they're going to force us to have vaccines, and next year it's going to be something, the year after that's going to be something, there's always going to be something. That in itself is a cycle. But if you come out of this day by day dreadful story that you've fallen into, life becomes a little bit more manageable. What do you guys think about that?
That's understood. I guess in like the perspective of working a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, that's kind of like an unbalanced approach to working, to life. Whereas if you were to like have something for yourself, you set your own schedule, and then you're okay with taking those breaks. You're okay with not touching, your work. That's the more balanced approach. Like, for instance, setting up this channel has been like a rodeo, because it's like at one point you want to kind of, or I want to kind of like force myself to get it all out. But my mind's like, take this day to relax, take the next day to do, your house chores or whatever, and don't kind of press it all at one go. And that's when it gets sloppy.
Right. And you'll also find that when you do something, when you want to do it, it's so much better versus when you're doing something because you feel like you have to and you're forced to do it. You got to clean your room just because it's Monday, right? Versus, maybe you did it on Friday when you had the free time and the energy to do it. Not only are you going to do it, but you're going to do a better job because you're feeling it. You're in rhythm with yourself. Learning about these cycles should help to get you acclimated to living in rhythm. Know thyself, know your rhythm, know your patterns, know your triggers.
I guess that's why planetary hours kind of come into play.
It can. I personally haven't found too much use from those, but that's just me.
Okay.
I like how she said that Binah links with Malkuth as the root with the fruit. So when I'm looking at the tree, I'm looking at of course, the left pathway of that, which is the feminine side. So you go from Binah, Gevurah, Had, and then down to Malkuth. And Malkuth is within, when you put them within their spheres, it is the fruit. And Binah is the root of the tree within the pillar of severity. So, with Binah being understanding and Gevurah being judgment or strength, and Had being reverberation, Malkuth, which is the kingdom, it would only make sense that it would reverb, or it will vibrate back up to its source, which would be that root, because we have to, if we follow those pathways, if you follow path 660 and 400, Tav and Samek and Vav. But
Mhm.
so when I look at that, I like how she put that, and she said this is indicated in the Yetziratic text of Malkuth, in which it says, she sitteth upon the throne of Binah, and it is for this reason that a hard and fast attribution of the gods of other pantheons to the different Sephiroth is impractical. So I like, when I looked at that tree, I really understood that, because that even goes, from that particular, if you look at it from the elemental point, you have fire, air, water, and earth, in that order, or you have water, fire, and earth. But Bina is a water sphere, so
Mhm.
it would only bring that water to Malkuth, and then that is going to actually bring forth, in a symbolical meaning, that water from Bina is going to spill into Malkuth, which is the soil, or the kingdom of earth, and that is going to grow. So that would make it the fruit, you know.
Yes.
So I like how she put that, because it actually makes it creates, if you study well enough, and you really see it, it creates that symbolical, abstract thinking within yourself, once you really sit back and you listen to what she's actually, giving forward.
Yeah. Very interesting, the symbology with even that concept of Binah being the root and Malkuth being the fruit, because the symbology often corresponds, right? We got Mother Earth of Malkuth, but we've also got the Divine Mother, the giver of form, the giver of life, as Binah. Mary and Isis, they're both attributed to Binah as well as Malkuth. A lot of the prominent feminine mother archetypes can be related to both Binah and Malkuth because of that reflection of seed and root.
Yeah.
The process that began in Binah reaches maturation and completion in Malkuth.
You're absolutely correct. And then if you even look at it from the masculine side, from Hawkma, because Hawkma is dealing with fire, and once you go down that side of the tree back into Malkuth, you will see a whole nother correlation that will bring that sun energy. So basically, just saying, if we look at this thing, that you got water coming down the left side, and you got fire coming down the right side, all entering into the kingdom. This is why that Malkuth is the root. And basically, once you get into the other, to basically to the realm that we're living in, the world of action, Asiya, and that entails Teferad, and the other ones. But I just found that very profound when I really thought about that, and when I actually looked at how those paths travel down to Malkuth, because it has to go, as we know, as above, so below, and that's, and so below as above. So they both go back up. So one feeds the other. The root feeds the fruit, and the fruit also feeds the root, because once the fruit falls off the tree, it just basically returns back into the soil. And that in turn will make that soil more fertile, so the tree can keep growing,
Yes.
Awesome.
brings this image to mind.
Hmm. I remember that process.
Just what you said about on the root of one tree being the fire and the other being the water.
Hmm.
What were you saying?
No, I was agreeing. I said, yeah, I was agreeing.
You said it also brings to mind something else.
Oh, I said, I remember that going through that, the whole Masonic thing.
Oh, it sounded like you were about to go somewhere else before I popped that up.
Oh, no. I'm finished.
Okay.
I'd like to add to that though about the seed becoming the fruit and then the fruit in turn planting more seeds. That's kind of also like the spiral of the universe, how it returns to the point, but not quite the same point. So as more and more seeds planted, it just keeps growing.
Yeah, it continues, and that's I think that also adds to the illusion that they call this. They say that this is the illusion, that this is the world of deception or whatever. I think that's because it doesn't end. The seed continually manifests the fruit, which manifests the seed, which manifests the fruit. It's a hologram. It continues to repeat itself. It's a fractal. It keeps going. So we're not going to find an end of the matter in the material plane. We're not going to find an end to the matter in any sphere below Kether of Kether. We're not going to find an end or a resolution or a conclusion in any sphere except for Kether of Absolute. Everything below that will continue to perpetuate itself in some way, shape, or form.
And just think how much more profound what you just said. If you think about it, it makes much more profound death. Just because you cease to exist in the physical, you're just going to feed back into the non-physical, and just as you return back to that, another baby is being born into the physical. So if you look at each of us as a seed, which in fact that we are, we feed and we grow and we die and we fertilize, and then it's like this continuing a continuing process, like you said.
Yes.
It says one feeds the other.
Yes.
What? Let me ask a question. What? Because you did what book or books correlate with Malkuth? Not cups, right?
Yes.
Cups.
No, Pentacles.
Pinnacles. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, you said cups, and I saw pentacles. But yeah, pentacles, earth, coins, and hell, and it makes sense because with Malkuth being the bottom of each tree, and the Malkuth of Asaya being the bottom bitch holding it down, right? Everything, all those influences and energies, they fall down and rest upon her. Everything. She's literally bearing the weight of all 40 spheres, and beyond, because there's spheres within spheres. Just like the pentacle, the coins represent earth, because earth receives all the influences of the other three elements, the air, the fire, the water. It all has to take place on earth. So in ceremonial magic, you're supposed to have these four weapons: the dagger, the wand, the chalice, and the pentacle.
Yeah.
The pentacle is supposed to be what you write your personal sigil on, or a particular sigil of the power that you're working with. You got the pentacles of Solomon, you got the planetary pentacles. You're supposed to have your pentacles and do your repetitive ritual on top of it, and it accumulates the energy every time you do it. For some reason, this isn't talked about when it comes to ceremonial magic, at least on YouTube. But if you read, you'll figure that out. Or if you talk to an occultist who knows what they're doing. But here's a pro tip for people who are still practicing ceremonial magic. You're supposed to have a pentacle that represents earth, and you're supposed to do your rituals on that pentacle. For that reason, because it receives that energy and it accumulates it, and you're building an etheric pattern, basically. If you're doing a prosperity ritual on your prosperity sigil, over and over and over again, you're attracting the etheric pattern of wealth into your life by following that process. I didn't get that at first either, but after doing it successfully, I'm seeing that that's where the suit of earth, the pentacles, the cards come into play. The tree of Asaya receives all the influences of Bria and Yetzirah and Atzilut. And honestly, the 10 of Pentacles, the Malkuth card of Earth, it represents wealth. It's supposed, when you're receiving the abundance of the universe, it's not supposed to be a struggle. You're not supposed to be buckling under the pressure of life. You're supposed to receive abundance. It's supposed to be wealth. You're supposed to be overflowing with all the spectacular forces of the universe.
And I think that's what that's like a symbolic meaning of a cornucopia.
Yeah.
The cornucopia has the season of abundance, and it's time to reap more. Like, we know if we detach from the emotional memory of what was done to the Native Americans during, what we've gotten from Thanksgiving and stuff, we would see it on a more occult spiritual level of a time. As you just said, the being that if your work was fruitful, you will be able to have an overflow that you can share with other people.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be, as we say, grounded. So, the whole thing, when we look at this whole science, because this is a spiritual science, we have to first be grounded within the understanding of our masculine, of our feminine, be grounded within or be rooted in our understanding and in our wisdom and in our power and our force. If we're not rooted deeply enough, then you're not going to have any fruit. You won't have anything, because just it's no different than the wisdom that you reflect as a teacher. You obviously are bearing fruit, by being grounded in that understanding. So basically, the mirrors of what we know with the Sephirah of the tree is mirrors of like mirrors of opposing forces of divine faculties. So once we understand each one of these faculties or deities or whatever has become correlated with that, then we can utilize the force or those faculties within our life here on Malkuth, because that shows forth the fruit, whether it's going to be sweet or whether it's going to be sour.
Yeah. I like that you said that, grounded. What an appropriate word for talking about the element of earth. And I like what you said also about how if you're not properly grounded and rooted in a foundation, right, you're not going to bear forth any fruit.
Yeah.
So to get caught up in the vicissitudes of life, to get caught up in this and that, you're more attached to the air element. You just expanded and blowing everywhere. You're not really grounded enough, like a tree. It doesn't matter if it's a hurricane or a tornado or whatever. If it's properly grounded, that tree is going to be stable and it's going to weather regardless of time passing and people and situations and all this other stuff. It's going to produce the fruit that it was intended to produce. This is why, as occultists, in order for us to produce, we've got to stand firm on the things that we believe in, the principles. And like you said, to know thyself. The first aspects of the tree in the supernal triad is the masculine and the feminine principle, right? To understand the nature of when to be active and when to be passive. If you understand that simple part right there, you can function on these other planes appropriately. But a lot of people don't understand when to be active and when to be passive. Sometimes we're passive when we should be active. Sometimes we're active when we should be passive. That's not being grounded or rooted. It's being imbalanced. So yeah, it's crucial to be grounded.
You can even use, we can take that thing to church. You can use the Bible in the parable of the sower.
Ooh.
When they talk about when Jesus spoke about there's a man, got he got these seeds, and one falls on rocky ground, and the sun, it may sprout, but when the sun reaches its heat, it's gonna burn them all up. Then the other seeds fall on sandy ground that the roots won't be able to take deep enough, so it'll die. So that's the whole thing. But that's why that's why the whole word, being rooted and grounded, you also have to add that word cultivation. You have to cultivate yourself as well. So if we're not, so what we're doing in basically our studies and gaining understanding is we're cultivating ourselves. We are by being a physical composition that we can physically see, we are physically reflecting or emanating Malkuth. So we are an earthly being. We are an earthling. So the whole thing is we have to cultivate that inner soil. So the fruit that the spiritual fruit that's within us, which is basically that genie in your mind, or whatever you want to call it, your genius or your intuition or your quote unquote magical existence, that right there is your fruit. Some people may look like they got it, but their fruit is going to show. It's going to show, like, man, you rocky soil, my nigga.
Right.
You weak. You ain't got now. It's like boxing. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
yeah.
You can, soon as you getting ready to go head to head, soon as a nigga do this with them hands, you're gonna automatically know this nigga ain't got no hand. His whole stance is off. So you already know you ain't rooted in no hand-to-hand combat, and you boof this nigga out. You understand what I'm saying? So that's
Ooh.
the same thing with spiritual science. Nature, like I said earlier, already is activated in you. So once you play with something that you ain't ready, or you want to play with, nature may give you a little taste of it. But you know what? Nature will also play with you. What may be sweet may mess around and be the poison that makes you fully sour, or basically can kill you. I take it to church again. The Psalms say too much honey makes the belly bitter. You know what I'm saying? Honey, good for you, but try to drink a whole jar of honey and see if you don't end up in the ER. You know what I'm saying? So it's the same thing. Take this information and try to ingest levels that you haven't rooted yourself for, and you're gonna get shaken all around. Like you said, you're gonna be floating all around, all over the place, looking crazy. Now you the crazy Kabbalist now.
Oh man.
You know what I'm saying? You don't want to be the crazy Kabbalist. You know what I'm saying?
I recall when I was taking in a lot of information some years ago, and I was very heady, like I kept it to myself a lot. I noticed that physically it played out too. Like my balance was really messed up. I would trip over my own 2 feet, and like even when I would think I would be looking around and good to go, I'd bump my arms into door frames and stuff, and I was like, why is this happening? And I had a mentor at that time, and she was like, it's because you're too in your head. If you're too in your head, it's going to play out in real life and you won't have any balance.
Yeah. Mind chatter. That thing is so deep with mind chatter.
Oh yeah, I was definitely
too in your head, as if you were storing that energy, like you were taking everything in and not releasing it out.
exactly, like I was really into like YouTube lectures, like listening to Jordan Peterson and these YouTube debates about politics and all that. And all I would want to do is just like have word vomit, like get it out to the next person I see. It's just like, did you know this? Did you know this? Blah, 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 blah. And then like I could tell I was losing friends. I could tell that people didn't really want to be near me. It's because it's like I knew all of this information, but I could not express it in a balanced way. It's like as soon as I took it in, it was just building and building and making my head bigger and actually throwing me off with my feet. Like I didn't have that foundation to relate it to. And the more I kept looking for people to, blurt out my information to that had a similar mindset, the more off balance I got.
Like I'll correlate it to boxing again. Footwork is important. It's of course hand coordination, and you also have to have a sense of being able to sense when your opponent is getting ready to attack. But the whole important thing is it's those legs. Weak legs, the whole body gonna be weak. Especially if you have and you mix a weak leg with a weak back, you're really going down. You know what I'm saying? So that's the whole thing with us, with this tree. We have, the middle pillar. If you're not some sort of open to the communication from Kether that comes directly down through Tifereth, then that's gonna be an off balance right there. So just by us adhering to whatever each individual's calling is, the reason you're here right now is because you're obedient to the divine communication, whether you hear it, understand it or not, is coming directly from Kether, popping straight on down to Malkuth. That's the reason why people start getting into this particular information that changes your life for the better. But you also have a choice. You can keep going on down and go right on to the clip-off tree if you like. That tree don't ever speak about anything of being balanced. You won't get into balance when you deal with the clip-off. You deal with power, usage, and projection. It's no different, and that's why you really got to go. If you do go back and really look at Star Wars. You know what I'm saying? You have the Jedi saying don't let your emotions turn you to the dark side. They never say the Jedi's never saying we must destroy the dark side, because they know they can't. There is no destroying the dark side. You can go use it if you want, but realize it's going to come with a different price than it's going to come with, say, like the Jedi is the tree of life that we study from Kether to Malkuth. The dark side and the Sith is the clip off. They don't care how or what they use to obtain what they want, as long as they get it. And that's not a balance, because you can't destroy everything just to obtain something. So this tree, at least, it has this balance. So like I said, with your foundation, your legs got to be strong enough to hold the whole tree up. You can't be all Bina, as Trav said earlier, or you're gonna be off. Bina, is attached to Chokma, and so on and so forth. So being grounded in our foundation makes everything evened out.
But aren't the Sith still creating balance by their actions? By being in imbalance, aren't they still creating balance and whole?
Exactly, because neither one will exist. That's why I said the Jedi, they can't destroy the dark side. All they do is go to war against Darth Vader and Darth Plagueis and Darth Maul and all of these different the actual workers of the dark side. They just become the worker. They're not the actual dark side. They just become a dark lord. You know what I'm saying? So you can destroy the emanation, but you can't destroy the actual light where that projection come from.
Because the light is coming from the same place.
Yeah, you can
Catherine.
break a light bulb, but that don't mean you killing the electricity.
So do we use the clip-off to advance on the tree in any way? Or was that what you were just explaining?
I think that's a whole nother thing right there. The clip off is something that's something totally, to me, and I'm only giving for my personal. Travis may can build better than I can. Me personally, the clip off is a personal thing. That's totally something that's a self-study. You should if anybody interested in that, that's your choice. That's how you gonna come into contact with whatever you have within the darkness of your cellular level self. Because that's basically what the clip off is. You basically utilizing whatever dark opposing forces that you have within yourself. It's your resistance, or it's whatever you're going to use to obtain what you want. It's no different than just because I lived in a particular side of town during a particular time when it was the high point of negativity called the crack era. That didn't mean I had to go out there and sell crack just because it was there. Those are choices that I use. So I chose to utilize my dark forces, or my my whatever was my weakness, poverty, not having nothing to eat. So I chose to go out there and do something to get something to eat. Or I could have withstood that and I could have did something else, go pick up cans or whatever, or begged for money somewhere. But I chose. So the clip off is that's basically a self choice. Being that's why I call it the shells. That's the remnants of an original tree that once it was used to give you that ultimate light, it broke off into an opposing force. That's why the off is not the original sun center anymore. Now it had to emanate downward into Tippereth. So Da'oth is not, like we say, it's not a sphere, but originally it was a sphere. So Travis may can build better on that of usage of the clip off.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I wouldn't recommend dealing with that before knowledge of how the standard tree operates, but do what you want. If it's calling you, then go for it, because it's calling you for a reason, right? Just identify that the reason is of a spiritual nature, not of a fleshly nature, because sometimes we want to do stuff just because it sounds cool. But do what you want, honestly.
Dude, that makes
I was
sense.
just a question. I was just wondering.
And that's not just for you. That's for anybody, because a lot of people ask that all the time.
Okay.
But I want to go back to what Shango was talking about, as far as like if you're squaring up with somebody to fight, if you can notice a weakness, that's what you aim for. Sun Tzu, The Art of War, or hell, 48 Laws of Power, 33 Strategies of War. You go for the weakness. You don't attack somebody where they're strong at. Doesn't make sense. You're expanding all your energy. When it comes to warfare, naturally you find the weak point and lean on it hard until it breaks. It doesn't matter how strong the rest of the structure is. If that weak point is located and pressed upon, the structure will collapse. With that being said, this is why it's so important to have a well-rounded study, right? If trying to study something that you don't have a foundation for is just like working on your arms extremely, you know what I'm saying, to the point where they're super buff, but your legs look like spaghetti noodles. That don't make sense. Somebody come for the legs and you're done. You want to have a well-rounded, balanced curriculum. So that's why it's so important to study the foundation, study the basics, actually study. And I'm not saying you can't advance, you can't get smart, you can't get powerful, whatever, through books only. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's just about books. What I'm saying is balance and temper your revelations that you're getting with scripture, right? With the knowledge that's packaged up from experienced individuals. Blend their wisdom with your wisdom, model their mind and what they've discovered and what they're doing with what you've come across. You put those two pieces together and you have a well-rounded, structured evolution. If you just stick to one or the other, you're like the dude that didn't do back day in years, or leg day, or whatever y'all call it. I don't do that stuff, so I don't know. If it's just book study, you got no experience. If it's just, oh, well, the spirits told me and I've channeled the divine, and oh, in my opinion, if you're just one of those people, you know what I'm saying? Well-rounded. This is how you stand up. Not just debating and arguing with people. I'm talking about when you actually do encounter these energies, you're going to be tested. Dion Fortune talked about in this chapter how Saturn is the tester, right? It's the tester that doesn't give you more than you can handle. And if you can't handle much, you're not going to be given much. How do you get to the point where you can handle much? A well-rounded foundation. You got to have roots. Got to have roots to get that fruit. Binah is about the roots.
See, Trav, you're preaching, brother. See, I go, let's take this thing, let's take it to Sunday school. So the whole thing is, like you said, you got to be tested. So when you go back and you read the Bible, now you can read that thing with different type of eyes. So when it said in the book of Job, when they was basically having this meeting in heaven, then Satan appeared. Basically, he questioned God, you know what I'm saying? When he was, because God, what they were talking about, God said, well, have you tried my servant Job? Basically, Satan be, as the concept of the Bible, Satan be going around looking for people to mess with, to see if they foundation strong in faith in God. So basically, this God told him, well, go try my man Job. So then the devil, who is the tempter, said, well, you got a hedge around him. I can't get to him. Take the hedge down, and I bet you he'll curse you to your face. So basically, that's what the concept is. If you ain't got nothing testing your knowledge, then you don't really have no knowledge, because you have to be able to apply what you study. You gotta be able to manifest it outwardly. So it's no different than us studying all this information. If we're not able to transform or manifest a new life with it outwardly here in Malkuth, then it's nothing but intellectual jargon. We might as well just keep doing this Zoom forever.
Mm-hmm.
So when we get off the Zoom, what you doing? And I'm not questioning, but I'm saying, what exactly are we doing with the tree of life? Are we able to manifest, or not manifest, but are we able to see Binah actively operating within your physical realm? Are we able to manifest the elemental forces of Binah to change the interaction within our physical realm? So the whole thing is, basically, like you said, if we don't have nothing testing us, or we don't have no opposing force, then how are we gonna know if my sword is sharp enough? It ain't different than samurai. Samurai had to be tested. You just can't come just because you got on some fly silk robe,
Yeah,
in your sword looking mad fly and shiny. That don't mean I'm gonna see if you know how to use that shit, my nigga. Shing shing, what's up? And now you're gonna have to show me what you got. You know what I'm
just
saying?
wearing an ankh, or you just wearing, you know what I'm saying, crystals and shit.
You know what I'm saying? Can you manifest the power of that ankh? Break it down. It's no different than, like, say, like, I make an image in a program to put on the shirt. You group the image together because they all come from different pieces. But then what you got to do is you got to ungroup it so you can now manipulate. So a person who wears all of this stuff, make them ungroup all their forces and see if they able to break down each component of what they're proposing to be their foundation.
There you go.
It's like masonry. people be having Masonic rings and be having emblems on their car. Well, little do people know, another Mason can come and rip your whole emblem off your car if you're not able to do what's called protecting your emblem. There's a whole process of questions that you can ask somebody. Man, what's that on your car? What that stand for? And if they recognize you, or they stand, as it says, standing on their square, they're supposed to be able to defend their badge. You understand? If they stumble on any part of that, you can take their ring, pop their chain off their neck, rip the emblem off their car, and all of that, because you just found yourself unworthy to have that emblem shown out in public. So that's no different than anybody else. So once a person starts, now they're walking around with, like Trav said, big ankhs on and stuff like that. But you can't break down the metaphysical components of what each part of that ankh represent. Then you might as well let them pop that off your neck and throw it in the gutter.
Because it ain't doing you no good, really.
It's not.
Too bad. Too bad you can't go and change somebody's Facebook name if you test them.
You childish.
He talks about all this in verse 44 and 45. And this is the symbolism of Binah being the throne, right? The throne. What is a throne? It symbolizes the foundation that the wisdom sits upon, right? That the righteous one, the king, the God sits upon that throne. And she likens the throne to the butt of the rifle. You know what I'm saying? You put the rifle up to your shoulder and you shoot, right? Now you got the projection of the bullet, but the force kicks it back. And the shoulder rest, you know what I'm saying? Your shoulder absorbs that force so the gun doesn't go flying everywhere. What does she say it was like? It's like a springboard. She compared it to something else as well. Hold on. And this is in 44. But yeah, pretty much how like these long distance cannons, you know, they have to be anchored and they have to be positioned in such a way that they're not going to go rebounding all over the place, right? And this is what I mean by the foundation. This is what we mean by being well-rounded. Because when you're being tested, it's not just you're being tested just because you're being checked. It's because, you know, if you're walking around with these military medals on and you've never served, somebody who knows better is going to check you, and it might not be pleasant. Just like what Chango was saying about the Freemasons or any other group, you know, like the Nation of Islam says, you got to show your receipts. You know what I'm saying? Don't just be out here claiming stuff, claiming a set that you don't rip, because it's unwise. So this information, right, the foundation, getting and accumulating and testing it yourself so that when a test does appear, you pass, not because you intended to look cool, but because you understand and because you're actually doing the work. So that's what the throne represents. It represents that foundation that the power can rest upon. And now it's not that you're being resisted, it's actually supporting you, right? So it depending on you, it can be the resistor or it can be support. Is it your ceiling or is it your foundation?
That's like you're right. You said what she said in 44. It is in fact a thrust block, which takes the back pressure of a force as the shoulder takes the kick of a rifle. That makes sense. It's no different than a runner. You know, we know Usain Bolt is extremely fast, but if his chalk or his block is not rooted into that track good enough, his thrust force ain't gonna be there. You know, that's anything like that. Like I said, that just goes back to the foundation. If we're not rooted deeply in the foundation, then it ain't gonna all this other stuff that we pile up on us. It's not gonna work.
And we had to sit down a little bit. Sleep. Yeah.
I'd like to piggyback off that. Like I was thinking today that women are kind of like natural occultists, whereas like shit testing, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that term.
Hell yeah.
Women
Perfect
are like
example.
natural shit testers, and it's like we do it automatically, like not knowing what we want in that moment, kind of like wanting a guy to kind of figure it out, that's like that shit testing. It like happens so naturally. I have to get a good example of it. But yeah.
That's perfect right there. The shit testing. Some, and some females do it for fun because it's fun to watch a dude crumble under the pressure like that, especially if he thought he was.
Fucking is.
I'm not gonna lie, that is funny to see. But often, most of the time, it's not done on purpose. It's the
That shit's
natural essence of
organic.
the female. What was that?
Yeah. No, I'm saying it's organic. It's definitely organic.
It's organic. It's the natural essence of the feminine. Hence why Saturn, Binah, is the natural essence of the feminine, the tester, the resistor, or the throne of Isis.
Like you
Right?
can see it in
Osiris,
nature
it's a
too.
throne.
You're right.
Like you see it with birds, how the male birds have to do these elaborate dances and how they're elaborately colored. Like they had to evolve the coloration. They had to make their specific dances. And I was watching this one documentary on the male birds had to come up with their own unique dances. Like one species had to clear the forest floor to make these sculptures to impress the female, whereas another had to come up with their own dance. And like these males would sometimes group together in one species of bird to make their own dance, but there would have to be like that alpha male that takes charge in it to coordinate the whole thing, and with insects too, like the women and the female insects are usually bigger than the male, and if they don't act right or after mating with them, they get eaten, they get their heads chopped off,
The
and it's
consumer,
just
the devourer, Kali, Venus.
exactly.
Yes,
That
that's
makes
the
perfect
feminine
sense.
nature. So with this shit testing shit, look at what's actually going on. She's testing your integrity. She's testing your strength. She's testing your fortitude. If you can't take little side comments, if you're uncomfortable, insecure, she's checking all that. She's testing your integrity as a masculine force. If you can be broke down that easy, you're not worthy of, her ship.
You're exactly right. That is just
Oh yeah, when I was in Louisiana, I ended up running into like a Bakor, and one of the advices he gave me when it came to like encountering other occultists or like anyone practicing was like check out what they're wearing, kind of watch they have, how do their shoes look? You can tell a lot by their shoes. Is it nice shoes? Does it look like they don't care? How's their relationship? Are they constantly fighting with their significant other? Like you can tell if their foundation's shaky, if they're just putting on a show, or if they actually have that foundation to give good power.
That makes perfect sense, man.
Good
That makes perfect sense. I heard a Bakor say the same thing. It's Haitian Bakor. He stay fly. He stay with jewelry on. He stay ringed up, watched up. He looked like a millionaire every time you see him. He said, there ain't no broke Bakors. He said, we do what we do for spiritual reasons, but we get paid for this. So we should look like, he said, I should look like I'm getting paid. I said, man, you definitely look like he stay. That makes perfect sense. And he's a Haitian Bakor, very, very powerful. You definitely don't want to be in the other end of his bad side. But he said the same exact thing. Judge them by how they look. And even when you go back into families, like your mother would tell her daughter that, you want to judge a man if his shoes look bad, or his fingernails is always dirty, then you know that he ain't really a person who cares about his appearance. So that kind of stuff goes back into it's just a natural thing, like Knight said, that that's always been there. The birds, the pretty colorful birds are the male birds. The female birds are basically don't really have the colorful, like people don't know, the peacocks we see with the big plumes, those are all males. The females don't necessarily have those. So we all go through that. It's no different when we played sports. You don't want to be the corny dude on the basketball court or the football field. Every time you get the ball, somebody's smashing you. Every time and the cheerleaders looking at you. So that's the whole thing. So it's really a natural, and I think that really says a lot as masculine force is not a masculine force unless the feminine force recognizes it as so.
There you go. There you go.
We got, I think, when we really look at that, when we look at people who are occultists and they're married, you want to see a sweet, loving companionship. Who wants to see a worker and they're always grouchy to their mate all the time? But like, where's the balance in your relationship? I don't even see the tree in your relationship. So that's the, so that really, that makes sense, man, that it definitely has to be best. Like Dr. John Henry Clark said that before he passed away, the Million Man March was a waste of shoe leather. He said, because any meeting between any people that excludes the woman, he said that meeting is out of order.
Out of order.
So I understood the Million Man March because I went, but at the same time, the women, the sisters were still there. They were the ones giving us water and stuff like that, boosting us up. Good to see you, brother. Blah. But he was absolutely right that there was no representation of powerful, strong women within the group, and that's what's basically missing, I think, in today's society and in governments, why those trees are all off balance, because there's no feminine representation. Even if you watch Shaka Zulu, well, his mother was basically in very powerful control of the Zulus. And don't forget about the female shaman. So we're missing out on the balance of the feminine aspect of occultic power, because it's not there, or it's being suppressed.
Mm-hmm. And with the Shaka Zulu's mother, the wise crone, right? The wise old woman. This also points to the Bina aspect. She may be in the background, she may be controlling things behind the scenes, but you look at the feminine energy, not only receiving the masculine essence, but putting it into a structure, into a form, into an order. So she's maintaining order, the matron of the tribe. And it even reflects in today's world with different families, different businesses and structures. You might not always see her, but she's oftentimes there. And I don't know every CEO and every person controlling the strings, but I'm willing to wager that if one did know, you'd see differences in patterns of a company being run by a matron versus a company being run by a masculine leader. I think that'd be pretty interesting if we could have that kind of info.
Yeah.
But to what you were saying about the Bokors, what you and Josh were saying, I think that also reflects with the 10 of Pentacles, with the Malkuth of Asaya, with that wealth card, the reception of all those magical influences that you've got in order, in arrangement, in balance, that should naturally reflect wealth and abundance. So that even makes spiritual sense.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a good example, but this is what I've come to understand with what you're sharing. In journalism, for instance, I'll say sports. Many years ago, they had a few women to represent, I guess, sideline reporting or behind the desk. And a lot of those women, in my opinion, they had a lot of masculine tendencies, which is okay, meaning that they would, they would speak like a man, even though they would look feminine. But today, you go to the sideline reporting, and the women today are very feminine, and it makes sports much more colorful, because now you have that balance there. You have the masculine, and you have different perspectives, and it gives it balance, and it's giving it much more color. I just wanted to say that really quick.
Yeah.
Thanks. You barely see the feminine aspect in sports, and all sports teams basically they have cheerleaders But when it comes to the reflecting that outwardly on the public broadcasting, they don't necessarily show you the cheerleaders all like that. But the female sideline reporter would be that one who would get that inside view. So you're absolutely right that they have softened it up or allowed them to project their feminine essence. That's a good observation, Darren.
Thank you, man.
I never thought about it like that. That's real good. That's good observation right there.
Nice. So going to number 21, verse number 21, I think it was also very interesting how they talked about how the virgin comes into play. And we hear about the virgin myth who gave birth, but is still a virgin. In basic, human sense, that doesn't make any sense. How can you be a virgin if you've never had sex? But we got to look at the terminology here. Virgin didn't always mean someone who didn't have sex. But in this particular case of the Kabbalah, it's talking about how Binah is able to bestow life, to give birth, to manifest, but not be involved and wrapped up in it. The creation it's beyond Binah. She's not a part of it. And this points to, what's her name? Sophia, when we talk about the Gnostics, creation of the demiurge and that type of thing. How she's given birth to this creation, but she's not actually a part of it. And the Gnostics call him a bastard child. With him not having his father recognized, with him not understanding, you know what I mean, the balance of the force. So that's why he's living in blindness and chaos. In particular, in 21, it's the sentence that talks about how Binah is referred to as the sanctifying intelligence. Sanctification conveys the idea of that which is holy. The Virgin Mary is held to be intimately associated with Binah, the Great Mother. And from this attribution, the mind is led on to the idea of that which brings forth the all, but retains its virginity. In other words, whose creativeness does not involve it in the life of its creation, but which remains apart and behind, as for the basis of manifestation, the root substance whence matter arises. For although matter is held to have its roots in Binah, yet matter as we know it is of a very different order of being to the supernal Sephirah in which the essence lies. Interesting.
So I guess that Lilith would be that destroyer aspect of that version creator.
Hell yeah.
So like taking that responsibility, like how moms always say, I brought you into this world, I can take you out.
Classic. Holy shit. Hey, that's Binah right there. I brought you in this world, I can take your ass out. That is a Binah quote if I ever heard one.
I was just like, oh no, I'm gonna get sucked back into your vagina. I don't want to.
Oh goodness. Oh goodness. The Oedipus myth.
Huh. Interesting.
But damn, she just basically mentioned the character from American Gods. What was the female character's name? That was her power. She'll suck you into her. Yes.
What was it? Goku?
Goku.
She was nothing to play around with. You didn't want none of that, Yoni, because it was a wrap once you got some of that.
Right into that universe of her.
You was going
here forever.
I just thought of that. As soon as you said that, I was like, wait a minute, that's from American Gods.
From the one episode I saw, they seem to be having some fun. So I don't know.
Thanks a lot. I'll pass, ma'am. I'm fine.
Jeez Louise.
Yoni worship right there.
Exactly.
But speaking of the gaping maw of the abyss there, you know, since I brought up the Qliphoth, Lilith is typically associated with the Malkuth or the Yesod of the Qliphoth. But, you know, there's other books and websites for people to research if you want to know about that.
Yes, yes, yes.
I brought you into this world, I could take you out. That is a Binah quote.
You know, I just had to find another diagram of the tree that I had, you know, just speaking about Binah and looking at that path that goes down the left. They have it here that Binah is spiritual love. So even when your mother would say something like that, it's being said out of love.
Out of love.
Because, you know, basically trying to save you from the troubles of the world, and being that it's the pillar of severity, Binah, spiritual love and understanding, is to save you from the severe left brain actions that we can manifest forth. So in this tree, they have spiritual love was Binah. Then you go down to Gavura, will. Hyad is thoughts, and of course Malkuth is sensory impressions. So I'm just looking at that: mind, soul, ego, and body. Binah is a very important sphere that taps us into that higher self. Because the way they have it broken down, Kether, Chokmah, and Binah correlates to mind, or in Hebrew, Neshama. And then you go to the other, you fall down to the other three. That's Ruach, the soul. And then you go further down to the next three that deals with the ego, or the nefesh. And then on the bottom is the body, or Malkuth, which is Guf. So I just can't get past that pathway going from being, you know, I'm just not get past, but I'm just really seeing how that really works out now.
Yeah. Speaking of the paths, I think it's really interesting that the very first path you encounter when going back up the tree is 32, the one that's attributed to Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
That one, the path of the tester there, it's funny that it's the first one. You know, it lets you know right off the bat whether or not you're ready for this.
Yeah, it's like it births you back. It's like she births you back in to the underworld.
Yeah.
Then Tao is a letter for that too, so they get to use the letter Tao, and that's the last letter. Well, I don't know, I might be wrong.
I didn't even think about that, Trav. 32nd path being Saturn and Binah being Saturn.
Mm-hmm. When I saw that in this chapter, and I thought of how you mentioned that I don't know if it was last time or the time before, you mentioned that there were some difficulties on that path. And it makes perfect sense when you think about Saturn being, you know, the tester. That the first path, that black path. As a side note, related but not related, there's different color schemes for the Sephiroth, and there's different color schemes for the paths. And this is just for people who are interested in this thing. You'll notice that there are some depictions that have different color schemes. We always see the colors of the tree, the spheres, in the Queen scale, Bria scale. which of course would be attributed to Binah as well. But we see that, and I think we said even to Isaac on like the first meeting, the best picture to meditate on is actually this cover of Mystical Kabbalah, because that color scheme incorporates the color scale of the spheres to Bria, and the paths are the color scale of Absolute. And what's happening is, which book did I read that in? I forgot which book, but it said that it's better to study the tree in a series of pairs of duality, masculine and feminine. So the Absolute color scheme of the paths represents the masculine aspect. It represents the world of Asaya, Absolute, excuse me, which is masculine. And the Sephiroth, the colors are of Bria, which is feminine. So we've got that flow, the force and the form, the rhythm, how the energy of the spheres is feminine, and then the paths are masculine. So it just kind of makes sense for them to be in that way. It's just a side thing for people to study up on if they want to.
Is this what you, because you have put this up there? Remember you put this?
Yes.
This
yes.
is it?
Yeah. So the Bria column there, those are the colors of the spheres of the Bria scale.
Yeah.
Now the paths, the paths have 4 different color scales as well. That's not listed in this book. It's listed in the Kabbalistic Tarot book in the very back. But those paths actually belong to the Absolute tree. So I don't know the significance yet of why those 2 were chosen for her book, but I know that Dion Fortune is far wiser than, you know, we can probably imagine. So, there's a reason why she did that. Just something to keep in mind, that's all.
Interesting.
Because I've seen on other books where the color schemes are different. And that can be confusing to someone who doesn't know better. So I guess the whole point of me even saying that is, if you're gonna meditate on a picture that you didn't draw yourself, I would say meditate on this book cover because it's in balance.
I know I probably got the color somewhere. I just can't find it.
Is there like a good reason why that gets mixed up? Like why you see different color patterns and stuff? I even noticed it because I made a little cork board using the major arcana, just so I have like a big, huge picture to really meditate on and stuff. And I noticed like some of the major arcana correspondences are off on some of the photos too. Like just doing Google searches.
Okay, now this is where it can get kind of tricky, because sometimes it's attributed to people who aren't you know, who just don't know and make a mistake. There's also times where people learn from other, oh gosh, it can get wild, because for example, in some traditions people attribute air, the air element, to swords, and some who attribute it to wands. You know, that's one that I haven't been able to really reconcile, so I just stick with what I know. You know?
Yeah, I don't know how that can be reconciled. I don't know.
Yeah, and there's others who, like you said, there's even people who have, and what you might be referring to is in the major arcana, there are some decks that swap the what is it? There's 2 cards that are swapped. I want to say strength and justice maybe, but those 2 cards are swapped in like the Marseille's deck and shit, all the others.
I think the one that I saw most that gets swapped in the photos was the Emperor for the Star.
Yeah, that one.
Vastly different, to me at least. But
I think the Crowley deck has that swap, maybe.
Okay, so like
I think
right.
One of the popular decks has that swap. But like I said, since I can't really reconcile it, I just go for what I know right now, and if I come across it again, hopefully it'll make itself clear.
Wasn't strength like 11 in some decks at one point or something like that?
Say that again. You're muffled.
Strength, wasn't it like 11 in one of those decks one time?
Couldn't hear.
Maybe you could type it in because I can't really hear you, bro. But as far as the mixing up of the color schemes and stuff, I know that the tarot cards, the minor arcana, they represent the different functions of the Sephiroth depending on the level it is, whether it's Asaya, Yetzirah, Bria, or Atziluth. The same thing as with the major arcana, with the paths. So even though the Fool card is the first path between Kether and Chakma, what we are in reference to when studying the Kabbalah typically on this mainstream scale that we're on this, we're not even in the esoteric, we're still kind of on the exoteric level. But for our intents and purposes of learning the basic patterns, that Fool card is how the Fool card functions in Atziluth. So the relationship between the aces and the twos of the Bria tree, that relationship would be the Fool card of Atziluth. This shit can get a little bit confusing. That's why I think it's such a good idea to study these cards and the attributions so that you can talk about them and picture them without having to reference so much. But I'm really not trying to make this sidetracked onto some shit that isn't really relevant. All I'm saying with that is there's a structure to what's being presented to us, and that structure reflects what's going on with the first three spheres, which is manifestation, then physical masculine element, then feminine element, and that balance, that rhythm between the two. That's to be seen and located all throughout the science of Kabbalah, the dance between masculine and feminine, force and form. Looks like he typed his question.
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yeah, what's up, KP?
I was wondering, like, for example, since Binah is like the tester, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, how does that also correspond to like when you use something else, like another Sephiroth on a path, like they use like Mercury or something, and Binah is gonna test you on what you've done in Mercury? Like, is it like a flow like that, or is it kind of like based on when you're just working with Saturn?
Well, I wouldn't say that it is depending on what sphere you're working on, quote unquote. What these energies represent is a description of what's going to be happening to you throughout your life, regardless of what you're doing intentionally. So if there ever comes a situation in which you're being resisted or you're being tested or you come up against something that really, puts you to the test, puts you on the spot, you're experiencing the energy of Binah. You know what I'm saying? It's not something that you intentionally do. It manifests in your life. When such a thing is going on, you can think to yourself, okay, so this is what the energy of Binah smells like. This is what the energy of Binah feels like. This is what the energy of Binah looks like. When you begin to train your subconscious mind of what the energies and the essences of these spheres are experienced as, you can start to put your experiences in order. Does that make sense?
By saying, when you say putting experiences in order, basically you're saying like you can identify it when it appears.
Yes.
Okay.
I found myself watching a movie about a football. You guys might know. I don't know. It's kind of, I don't know. It was on Netflix. There's a dude who was training to be a football player. You know what I'm saying? He was doing good all through school, and then this girl accused him of rape, and he had to, he ended up getting locked up for a super long time. He had to wear this ankle bracelet, and he found another opportunity to go to the pros, but he couldn't because of the damn the ankle bracelet and his situation. So every time that he would try, parole officer would pop up and cause him resistance. And he couldn't advance on the path because that parole officer was representing the energy of Binah. He continued to test him and test him. So he had to use his intellect to figure out how to go back to court, how to hire a lawyer, how to go back to that case and get resolved of the accusation to finally make it. But I just noticed that police represents Binah because the institution of police is represented by Binah. But that's what I mean, being able to locate the energy behind your experiences.
Okay.
That's like the point of all this, you know, of breaking down each Sephiroth, is to be able to understand in your life which parts of what we understand is happening, what is occurring. And then from there, you're able to, you know, to maneuver and make the adjustments in your own personal existence.
Yes. Able to maneuver and also able to reside in a balanced state to where you're not making decisions or quote unquote mistakes that throw things out of balance that now you got to go back and fix. You know, if you're able to stabilize your actions, your impulses, and how you're moving out here, right? If somebody, you don't get triggered and fight, now you've got a problem that needs to be solved. You understand how to move in stillness and balance so that you don't upset the energies that are present in your life.
Finding that mildness between mercy and severity.
Yeah. Yes. This is a degree of the usefulness of this study. This is a degree of how to apply it to your life. It's not the only way, but this is a huge way.
Okay. All right, so give me a quick example of how you would work with it in like a situation. You could make one up if you asked it.
How I would work with what part, what aspect?
Like you could stick with this one, like with the Binah, that's where we're talking about it. Like something more, yeah.
So personally, just from this conversation that we've been having, I've come to the conclusion and realization that Binah is not only the tester, but also the throne, right? So if I encounter an experience in my life where I feel like I'm being tested, being challenged, or I feel like I'm being resisted, I can flip that switch in my head. I can reframe, right? Because it's not only the test, it's also the throne. So I can use that experience to sit on top of and display my glory, right? As I'm being resisted, I can use that as an experience to prove my superiority, my strength within myself. So again, if someone's coming to challenge me to incite a fight or get me emotional or to react, et cetera, you can show off your divinity by not reacting in the way they expect you to, by having control over yourself, by sitting on that throne instead of having a fight. Recognizing the energy allows you to make the move to decide what you want to do. Even in this very same chapter, beyond, there's a difference between just thinking and just reacting.
Got it.
So like in relation to your own YouTube channel, Trav, how would you say the progression, could you correlate your progress from the start to now with the Tree of Life, like from your Goetia videos up until now? Can you correlate where kind of Binah fell on that aspect as well?
I think in a large part, the influence of Binah with me on YouTube had to do with me limiting myself as to what topics I would make videos of, to limit myself from being influenced too much from the people who did view my videos. Because what does happen to some people is they strictly just go off of what people are saying to them in comments and conversations, and they just make videos about that. And now you find yourself locked into a pattern of just reacting and responding, right? Instead of actually creating and thinking for yourself. So that's one example of, instead of me being limited, I use that as a throne. I did pay attention to feedback, and I did make videos, as responses to what people were saying, but that was only a sometimes thing for me. Is that a good example, or do you need another?
No, that's perfect.
Okay. Or hell, even in the comment section, if you're doing any kind of thing dealing with spirituality, you're gonna have people show up and try to start their little opinion battles. And most of those I chose not to engage. Most of them, the easiest way to squash it is just to agree with them. You know what? You're absolutely right. Regardless if I believe what they're saying or even care, when I tell them, yeah, you're absolutely right, they usually stop right then and there. So I win because my time wasn't wasted. And I also win because now they have a better feeling on the inside of me instead of, oh, this dude and da 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 da,
And that changes how they react to you after that.
Exactly.
After the fact, that changes the whole. Yeah, that's.
To be honest, there's some people I think in the chat right now who first found my channel by trying to argue with me.
Yeah.
Not Paimon, it's King Paimon.
Right. You're exactly right. Absolutely.
Fighting without fighting, as Bruce Lee said.
Be like water. And it isn't lying, because you know what? You are right. In your own head, you feel that you're right. I'm not going to challenge you. But when you're ready to see a different perspective, it is here, if you choose to see it.
I feel like I struggle a lot with that. That's like one of the biggest things I struggle with. I argue with strangers way too much online, or at least I mean I've gotten way better in the last few months, but it was just like economics, politics, medical stuff, and I just would see information come up and just, where did you get this information from? Like, and then it would bother me, like this fire, this compulsion to react. I like almost couldn't even control it, and so realizing that I needed to stop. Like I'm fully aware, like it's a flaw. It's a huge personality flaw in me, and realizing I need to stop and just disassociate with that, so I can then regroup and figure out how to actually control it. Even on my Facebook, where I would write out a post like, oh, I need to stop arguing, but like realizing that's also part of it. I'm looking for attention or sympathy, or I want validation that, oh, I'm not a bad person for arguing with people over the stupidest things. But
and even the realization of that shows improvement, shows evolution, shows, because most people who live and are stuck in that cycle, they can't even see it. They get so triggered that they're blinded. We've all experienced that. But as one of the things that I've been coming to see is there's a difference between activity and identity. We do things, but that doesn't mean that's how we define ourselves. That's not you. That's just something you do, which means you can change what you do. You know what I'm saying?
It's a realization. It's a huge waste of time. Like I would spend like 2 hours arguing with someone, and then I don't know, just the realization that people don't see the world the way I see it. I'm experiencing my own world. So how can I assume that that person has the same education or the same access to knowledge? And like we all have access to infinite knowledge now. You can go online and look up anything, but do you have the research skills to make those connections? Do you know how to?
Bingo.
It's not right for me to just assume that the person down the street is going to be able to critically work through the same things that I spent months learning how to do. So
right. which is yet another reason, you know, because so that right there, right? You being intelligent and knowing so much, that can cause you to either go out here and prove that you know so much to other people, or you could go out and help other people learn what you know. Because there's some people who have the same info and knowledge, but you know, they end up spending their time trying to fight people and trying to dominate other people's opinions. But that goes to show a foundation that isn't really stable. That's like the dirty shoes on somebody pretending that they're rich. That in itself shows that you have ego issues that need to be dealt with, versus someone who goes out to help other people understand instead of trying to judge them. But either extreme could indicate that there are issues that need to be dealt with. But you know, it's all moderation. It's all balance.
I think we all kind of start off like that, wanting to, you know, impregnate our newly found wisdom onto other people, and people who, you know, especially people who are close to us, that we, you know, we want to influence them as well. But I think as you continue down the path, you start to realize that you're not going to convince anybody anything. So
Right.
the key, I know that it is for me, the key has been just working on continuing on my own journey and not being concerned about how anybody that I relate to is doing with theirs, because at the end of the day, that's something I can't control.
Right.
Totally. You cannot, if I may, you cannot be responsible for any other person's awakening, because it has to come from their own internal. Like we said, it's a 50-50 thing. Some people have to be agents of the other side, and some people have to be agents of whatever you are. You're in a matrix. Everything is supposed to be working against you. But your awareness and your level of consciousness is what makes you manifest your own reality. So you're not being marionated any longer. You're actually aware. Now, if you want to play, you play. So if you want to share your opinions, realize it's just like you're being that you're mostly by yourself, or these thoughts are in your head. You want to express yourself. Don't bother yourself about how many likes is getting, who is saying what or whatever. If it's what a reply, or you see that it's the same level of consciousness, then you can interact, because you never know what you're going to get from the other person. Nobody knows it all. Everyone is not totally against you. Some are there to teach you, but everyone is in flesh. So anyone is going to get tested, and any energy at some point can be a rivalry against you. So it's all about being aware every single second. You can't be like, oh, I'm woke, and then just keep accumulating things that are going to make you toxic again. Being aware and moving forward. You want to share an opinion, share it, but not with the intent of trying to, I don't know, like bring people along. Each person is here to find his or our own Christ consciousness. Now, it's not about preaching to people to accumulate souls. If you're light, you're going to accumulate light, because people are going to gravitate towards you naturally. I have right now on my Instagram, of which I don't even really like go into much of spirituality. Maybe I do that once in a blue moon. And I've got like half of my followers are actually the same thing. They come from nowhere, totally different from the kind of audience I usually used to have. So it's basically about your person. You are the one. You are the universe. We're united here, all together in different avatars, but we are all one in split avatars. So do whatever you want, do your thing, do you. And of the other thing Django was talking about the other time about looking proper, the ancestors didn't want us coming here to come be, I don't know, paupers, or to come think less of ourselves. Looking outside of us is what made us feel like we weren't enough and that we had something to prove. You already have that. You're already a rich person. You already have everything. But because you're in a comparative state, you feel like, oh, you don't live in a mansion, so you're not okay. But if the universe sees you being grateful for the water you have to drink and the birds that you listen to, every single thing in your presence and you're appreciative of it, then you get more of everything. The society has put us on a accumulate, work for. So we are basically always thinking of how to accumulate in order to validate that we've climbed another level of success. Whereas if you didn't do a thing a day, you're already at a level of success that is immeasurable.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So what you were saying also, just before you said that, you were talking about, trying to convert souls and trying to win people, and, how we all want to save the world once we learn about a little bit of knowledge, right? That again goes back to number 32, how she talks about the masculine and the feminine forces. I'll read it again. She says, we are negative in our relationships to that which is of a higher potential than we are, and we are positive in our relationships with that which is a lower potential. So that indicates that there's a time and place for everything. Your friends and family don't want to hear about the Kabbalah. They want to hear about baby Jesus. So they're not receptive, right? In a certain branch of psychology, they talk about a thing called rapport, right? You're not going to sit here and talk to somebody and have them listen to your ideas if you're not in rapport, if you guys are not in sync, if the person isn't open to what you have to say. You might as well be talking to a dog or bear, because it's not going to get through. So when we learn this information, it is for us to fertilize ourselves to learn and to grow. But trying to go out here and convert everybody and save the world to the wonders of Thoth and King Payman, they're not going to listen, because that's not the right relationship. They're not of the opposite polarity to us. They're trying to preach Jesus at the same time we're trying to preach the occult. So that's two masculine forces. It's not going to reproduce. Now, if you got a friend who's, they're kind of a Christian, but they're also open to burning sage and they want to know about their astrology chart, that's somebody who might be a little bit more open. But again, you don't want to overload them. You just give them what they're able to handle, because now we're exercising restraint. That's the limiter. That's another side of Binah. You should know when to employ restraint instead of trying to overflood. The plant isn't going to grow if you drown it with water. So likewise, when it comes to our relationships with everyone else, it really helps when we're aware of our position in relation to the other person.
That makes perfect sense.
I want to piggyback off of that too. So when I was really getting into the occult, listening to a lot of panic videos, how I always bounce my ideas off of my dad. Like, he was kind of my mentor growing up. He always taught me about like the nature of men, the nature of women, and like how I can't say this to men because they're going to get intimidated, or can't do this. So I was showing my dad a panic video, made perfect sense to me. And this is how I knew it was time for me to like move out and go on my own, is that when I showed him it, he was like, this man is absolutely crazy. He doesn't preach any values about family or structure or anything. And like, he was looking at me like he was disowning me in that moment. Like, he's like, how could you be listening to this information? It's really destructive, blah, 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 blah. But from my point of view, it gave me a foundation. It gave me a foundation about how I think about the world versus, how to stop piggybacking off of, my parents' wisdom and how to like formulate my own. So.
That's interesting. That's very interesting what you just said, but I think it's all about rapport, like Travis was saying, the kind of rapport and the kind of understanding of the relationships that you have. I personally had to speak to my mom. It wasn't something that was necessary, but it was something that in the kind of relationship that I have with her, I saw it as a priority, that I saw someone transition from being a Muslim, a dedicated one that did the pilgrimage and everything, into being a Christian, baptized and giving her all, like she spends every day in prayer. Now, it's worked thus far. But the thing is letting her know, religion or whatever, those prayers would work better if you stopped using an intermediary entity. that was just the information. Now, every other thing that goes on in the cosmos, energy or whatsoever, she's a little bit too, like, I would say, second dimension. You know, people with their levels of consciousness, it's not easy for you to bring everybody up to your level because it's not a stage. Consciousness is in the brain. So whatever dimension, it's in the brain. You can be in 7th dimension and sometimes you have to come do 3rd, 4th, 5th dimension shit. So until you're able to meet people at that kind of level, people are only ready to receive you at the level of their understanding. But for me, that was something like, I'm not gonna allow you be like, oh yeah, I wanna say some prayers to you, or I'm going on a fast, or I'm doing this, and I have this revival, and then you're gonna be, no, you're basically probably swearing, thinking you're putting in energy into something positive. So stop using in Jesus' name or whatever. Say, matter of fact, don't even say those prayers out. Say them in if you're not able to understand the concept of sitting still and being meditative. Because especially African parents, it's tough to let them see things from this other perspective. But then luckily, we have the tradition, we have the Ifa, we have the Awo, we have different other things like that they've been aware of. Their foreparents have used it. Their mothers usually go for incisions and stuff like that. They usually have like the what they call the assages, like this kind of meals they prepare in like ceramic calabashes that you have to eat them on your knees. So things like that, I didn't let her forget that when we were kids, you introduced us to that, because then in the Muslim community, it was still things that were tolerated. But then the Christian community became really more strict for her. So I think for me, being that she might have been the passage for me to come in through earth, I'm an independent soul. At the end of the day, it's all about me because there are no double deckers in the coffin. But it's all about transmuting as least much information that you can, because it's a seed. Never underestimate planting a little thing and what it could germinate into. Now, whatever she wants it to germinate into, when I get up to the Ascended Masters, I'll be like, yeah, I did my part. And that way you can always continue, and you can always know that the universe has your back regardless.
Yes.
You know, Trev, what's good about what they just said is, and what you said earlier, that Bina, you know, is that is understanding. You know, it's the his intellect in his passive, receptive, and reflective capacity.
Mm.
So once we reflect outwardly the understanding of a thing or a whatever particular science or words, anything that we reflect outwardly, the person who's going to receive it, it'll be received within that sphere of Bina. And through my studies, Bina also is in human terms, it manifests through reason and tradition. So once you give anyone some information that they're not used to, their receptive qualities of the Bina is going to be, it's gonna like squeeze it. The hole is gonna get really small so that they don't funnel all of it in until they try to rationalize what's being said to them. Because within their own personal traditional system, that's not what they're used to. That goes against the grain. So most people, it's going to take them a little bit longer to travel within whatever particular pathways to reach that understanding, so they can be receptive to the passive information. No matter how you give the information to them, whether you give it to them softly and sweet or you give it to them harshly and bitter, most people are not going to be receptive to it if it goes against the grain of their traditions.
Mm-hmm.
The person who's in there If they're Christian and you tell them something about Islam, they're going to be totally against it, because Islam doesn't treat the concept of Jesus Christ the same that Christianity treats it, and vice versa. So it's just this big opposing war, so to speak, against the two. You know, and just to add on, it still has to travel through, because don't forget that even though we're at Bina right now in our study and conversation, Bina must travel on to the next sphere, which we know the next sphere is going to be
Chesed.
But to get through Yesed, what sphere really does it go through to get there? It has to go through the knowledge of Da'at. Da'at is this and it basically that particular area is called they call it the Ruach HaKodesh, which is the Holy Spirit. So when it funnels that understanding through this quote unquote particular I'll just use the word refinement again. Once that understanding gets refined, which you can use it as a concept of a mind that's not accepting to tradition, they have to go first through their own particular rationalization. Then they have to kind of, once they get past their emotional attachment to their tradition, they'll be able to understand what you were saying. Then they'll gain more knowledge of this thing, because we can't forget that Bina is the first sphere within the lineup of severity. So even with this reflective understanding, and it's still a divine level of the supernal spheres, so it won't be truly understood by a person once you're tapped into that type of reflective energy. It won't be totally understood by somebody that's not within the connective attachment to that. They have to still go through their level of refinement to funnel down all that type of particular information. But I was just thinking about that from basically like a metaphysical or just a symbolic point of view through what, like I said, through particular studies in the human terms, that Bina it comes through the reason and tradition. So when we try to give particular information to people, they're going to only funnel that information through what they already have, traditional, whatever, you know? And it's hard for people to get to an abstract thinking. It's hard for a Christian to funnel the Bible through their intellectual mind, get to the spiritual intellection, and think about what they're reading abstractly, not in the objective sense of everything is real. What they're reading is real. You understand what I'm saying?
Is that because of the teaching process? Is that because how we're taught the Bible?
That's how we've absorbed. We really weren't taught. We can't even say be taught. We weren't taught anything. We were just given information that we sucked up through osmosis. We weren't instructed in the true essence of what the Bible is. Most people don't even know the difference between Jesus Christ and Jesus of the Essenes. They don't even understand just the two total differences of using two different descriptive terms of Jesus, the quote unquote Christ. You know what I'm saying? Most people think Jesus Christ is his last name. Like, Christ.
Mr. Christ.
They don't even realize that is within that realm, because Jesus is the Son. So we want to go back to an original Son, the Son that existed before the actual Tephra sphere, then we got to take Jesus back to Da, do that enlightenment of the darkened sun of funneling through pure energy and consciousness.
Like when people have this foundation on strictly morality. So, for example, like the social justice warriors, a couple years ago, everybody was preaching bodily autonomy, like for abortions. Like it's her body, her choice. She can do whatever she wants without a man's consent. Blah 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 blah. The baby's not even a human yet. Blah 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 blah. And then now when you get to the mask thing, there's no bodily autonomy at all. It's like that was completely erased from the book. Everybody just forgot that fight. They dropped it on the basis of just being moral, just because it's like the standard of it's the right thing to do instead of critically thinking about, you know, this thing we fought for, bodily autonomy. Now they're just giving it away. Like, no, no such thing as bodily autonomy. This so-called deadly virus that's in 100-degree weather and out of flu season is going to be the death of us all if you don't wear a cotton mask with a bunch of holes in it. Like that moral foundation, as I'm finding that a lot of people in my generation, that's the only thing they have to stand on, and it's a very teeter-tottery, shaky foundation.
And it's not just our generation. This is how mankind is easily governed. This is how mankind is easily controlled. That this represents the very principle of Binah as a relation to what Django said, tradition, right? It's not even done because it's useful. It's not even done because it's appropriate. It's done because our grandparents did it, or somebody in authority told us to do it, right? This is why we still have these Christian churches and people still think that's the way. But when we look at how the energy moves in the supernal triad, out of Kether, into Chakma, and into Binah, we've got the expression, which is masculinity, and then it's received, which is femininity. But it completes a circle. And in that completion, it should be done there. But the fact that Kether keeps pouring out, things keep evolving and keep changing and keep going. So the nature of Binah is that completion of the cycle. And the problem that humans have and society has is that when a cycle is completed, we base everything on that cycle and say, this is what it is, ignoring the fact that reality continually changes and continually evolves. This is why, what a stupid notion to teach internet marketing in colleges when the internet is constantly changing. By the time you get your little degree, internet marketing has changed so much. What you've learned is useless now. But even in verse 7 of this chapter, she talks about how all social organizations on which the dead hand of unprogressiveness weighs heavily, such as the Chinese civilization before the revolution or our older universities, are said to be under the influence of Binah, Father Time. So this is also why Binah is represented by old people and old traditions and old universities, because it's representative of a cycle that is no longer, that's losing relevancy with every passing day, because Kether continues to pour out. And if we stay stuck in a tradition or in a mode, we're just doing it out of rote. We're just doing it because, that's what everyone else is doing. And we're losing momentum. We're not catching the new wave, the evolution of life. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I remember being called a dreamer because I was talking about how I couldn't wait for technology to advance to the point where, automation takes over, to where we won't have to work in that aspect. And people are so used to giving out their energy and working, they can't even fathom a way in which we can survive without working. Like, people are so ready to be a slave or like stick to that mask of normalcy when there is no really normalcy, just comfort zones.
Comfort zone. I think that's another thing of Binah. As pattern seeking creatures, we seek patterns and we seek them for safety because it's comfortable. But the reality is The nature of the universe is change, constant change. So true strength, true flexibility, true survival is learning how to adapt. Oh my gosh, I don't have my book in front of me, but there's one powerful quote where it talks about the strongest compulsion in humanity is not the desire for survival. That is false. That's a lie. It's not the seeking survival. That's not the strongest force in the human. The strongest force is resisting change. The strongest force in the human is maintaining what you already think is reality. People will die for that. People will literally lose their life to maintain things so that they don't change from what they were. Binah. I'll grab the book upstairs so I get that line.
And that's why we know people who are versed in this type of information and use it to their best advantage with tradition, with things that tap into the reasoning, into the sphere of Binah, because it connects with a subconscious communication with the human brain and psychology. And that's how, once you give anyone something that will falsely connect them to a false type of spiritual essence that they start believing in, and then they start empowering this system through their belief, it's hard to get someone away from that right there. You have to have a strong resistant force within yourself, or a very great awakening to step away from those type of things, or even see the good in those type of systems, because there's good, like I said earlier, everything is to be used. So you can use whatever we call Christianity. You don't have to use the dogmatic system of Christianity, but you can take the book that's called the Bible and find particular aspects in there that you can use for your own personal morality system. Because as she mentioned earlier, everybody's morale or the morality system is not going to be the same. What might be moral for you is totally not the same, funneled through the same system of refinement that somebody else may see it as. That's why we have so much wrongdoing.
That reminds me of a
Exactly.
post. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just said exactly. I was just agreeing with what he just put up. I'm sorry.
That reminds me of a post I did for Ohm's Law. If I could share my screen real fast. Oh, it's disabled. Anyway, I made this post back in January. It was Ohm's Law. So voltage equals current times resistance. In other words, resistance equals voltage divided by current. The amount of power you are able to produce is being undercut or divided by the current. The flow available may be asking you to take a different approach. You can represent this numerically by resistance equals voltage divided by current. Therefore, using less voltage, power, in this case of mathematics, voltage is known as pressure, with a higher current will produce less resistance. So I did it mathematically. I don't know if I could. Yeah, I can't share my screen still. But at any rate, there's this pyramid with voltage at the top. And then at the bottom half is current in resistance. And so even in physics, it's telling you that the amount that you're able to produce is your current available. So you have to use the current available in order to produce. If you keep trying to go against that current, you're going to be met by resistance. And that symbol of the ohm is like that horseshoe symbol of resistance. That's also in God of War. That's also, I think, the symbol of Odin, if I can recollect, and also goes hand in hand with the current of Mercury. I've noticed. I went through that myself, where I was just pulling in way too much current. And I had a friend tell me like the more got it that you have with spiritual stuff can be your undoing too. Like I kept having got it moments to where it was just so fragmented and I could not express myself like coherently. It was just got it moment after got it moment after got it moment. So let's see, I can upload this picture into the group. Let's see. But yeah, if you check out the files section, I'll have it up there so you can have that visual representation of voltage and current and resistance too.
Cool. Yeah, I love to see that.
Okay, I put it in the side.
Oh shit, I was muted. Yeah, I was saying I changed the thing, so you should be able to do it now.
Oh, sweet. Thank you.
I'll read this quote here. Virginia Sater, the family therapist, once said something that has stayed with me for many years. She said, "You know, Richard, most people think the will to survive is the strongest instinct in human beings, but it isn't. The strongest instinct is to keep things familiar."
Repeat that.
Most people think the will to survive is the strongest instincts in human beings, but it is not. The strongest instinct is to keep things familiar. And to go on with that, she says, "I've known people willing to kill themselves because they can't face life, the thought of life without the partner who's died or left them for someone else. Even thinking about how things could be different overwhelms people with fear."
That's deep because you know people that's been married for like long periods of time. They get older. Once one passes away, the other one usually passes away not too long after that.
Yeah, I experienced that in real time. My babysitter, who I considered like a grandmother, she passed away some years ago. And then her lifelong partner of like over 50 years, you could just see his deterioration. And I think that's how like men typically get heart disease easier because they have that imbalance within their heart chakra or they're unable to cope within the heart when their other half passes.
Yeah, I've seen that too, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you know, men, when they're boys, they're told to suck it up, be a man. So we're not, so a lot of us haven't been allowed to express emotion. So the emotion has to be, it's by being repressed, it's causing a regression in that chakra center. It's kind of like wilting the lotus. You know, you're not just closing it, you're gluing that thing shut, and you're calcifying it. So it takes a lot of time to decalcify these chakras. Then you have to go through the process of learning how to awaken them, then go through the process of awakening them. So that's why some people just take so long, you know, and in like the Jewish process of Kabbalah, you had to be 40 years old to begin the process of learning Kabbalah. You couldn't be the oldest you can be is you couldn't be older than 50, but you had to be about 40 years old or around 35 years old. That's like the whole mystical story of Moses. Moses was 40 years old when he began the process of quote unquote freeing the Hebrews out of Egypt, you know, which is a whole mystical Kabbalah story within itself. So, you know, it's like these processes, and especially once, like, you know, like I said, once you go through years and years of a particular traditional system, imagine once the light of truth is flashed in your eyes about something that you've believed in for 40 years. What that does to someone who wasn't prepared or gone through a preparatory stage of having this bright light of the lightning flash them, you know? So, you know, it's like the sister said, it could definitely cause or create some imbalance in that whole ohm system of a frequency that's just totally fractured.
Yes, and on what you were saying, as far as even how you're traditionally, when it comes to Kabbalah, you don't actually start, you know, the real study and the real education until, like you said, after 40. And I imagine that part of the reasoning behind that is the accumulation of data. Accumulation of data is one thing. When you get enough data that it triggers a synthesis, that it begins to connect dots and things begin to make sense, that's a whole new level. That's called understanding. And what I've been finding by studying psychology parallel to Kabbalah and Hermetics and everything else is I'm learning that people think that they know something or they understand something because they know about something, right? People think that they understand tarot because they know that there are 70 plus cards, because they can recall the name of such a thing. But that's not the same as actually understanding it. People might say they understand magic or chakras, or I understand this, and everyone says they know, but they don't. Synthesis takes time. It takes years. You ruminate on this data, and the more time that you spend ruminating on the data, that's the more time you're actually working in that garden. That's the more that you're doing the work. And the more that you ruminate on that data, that you test the data, that you apply it to different scenarios, you observe the results, you gather your own questions, you make your own theories, your own processes. The more that you do that, it builds a wisdom. So now you're able to approach it from a foundation, from a throne, right? Instead of just repeating the data that you've been accumulating. That's why in the initiatory stage, you know, that's why the baby Horus, I forget the name of him, but in Kemet, you know, he's pictured with his finger up to his lips. Quiet, shut your mouth, listen, gather the data, gather the data, gather the data. And eventually, after testing in silence, because this also goes to Virgo, the hermit card of tarot, in the deep bowels, in the darkness, this is where you let that data ferment, let it congeal, let it come together until you're able to grow wisdom. And then the seed becomes a flower that breaks forth out of the ground, out of the dirt. Now the root starts to bear its fruit. You don't take someone else's fruit and think that you got fruit. No, that's meant to be consumed and planted, watered, developed, not just regurgitated and vomited and repeated. Well, Panic said this. Okay, but how do you know that to be true? Or even worse, Travis said this. Cool, but how do you know that to be true? Or even worse, Pastor said this. Pastor.
For me, this is similar to the process of acting, where you take the material and you absorb it. And then you allow it to, first of all, you have to relax. Relaxation is the key to everything.
Yeah.
So you have to absorb, relax, allow it to gestate or germinate inside you. And then when you are to communicate, you have to trust and let it come out of your experience, what your intent is, whatever you're communicating to that person. Then it's very organic and real. And I've just kind of taken everything that you all are saying. I'm kind of taking it that way as the process of acting, to be an actor.
The absorption rate.
Yeah. absorption, because when you absorb, then you're not formulating any judgment. You're just
Right.
taking what you're saying. And then your instincts are going to kick in because you already have absorbed the information and you have an understanding. So when you're going to communicate the person what you're trying to get, you don't have to think about how to look, how to step, how to sit, because you're living in the experience.
Mm-hmm. That's a powerful observation right there. Tony Jules put in the chat, that baby Jesus I was thinking about is Horapokra. I think Harpocrates is the Greek spelling of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that moment of silence, the hush, the listen, I think that's powerful, to not make a judgment on it, right? To sit there, absorb it, think about it, calculate it, ruminate it, test it. Then you can afford to make your judgment on it. But hopefully by that point, you'll understand that you don't need to make a judgment, because truth is what it is without your little funky opinions. That's why I try my best to not waste time on giving you my opinion, but I give you what I've either learned or what wisdom that I feel I've accumulated with what I've read or learned or practiced. A lot of people come in here and they're like, well, I just feel like, well, I mean, that's cool, but how can I use that? How can anyone else use that? I just feel like we should, okay, keep that to yourself. What can you deliver or share that you're studying that can help the next person? We're not here for your feelings. We're all here to get better personally with this stuff. No one is here to hear somebody else's opinion. I mean, I could be wrong, but I hope not.
And that's the whole thing with gaining knowledge, or be acknowledging the realism of that. You have knowledge is to know, it's to listen, it's to observe. You won't gain any knowledge if you're not listening and observing. You won't obtain the facts, or you won't get the foundation of that. You won't understand the conditions that come with obtaining knowledge if you don't sit back and listen and observe.
Mm-hmm.
That's really a true process of a practitioner, or one who does magical things. You have to do them in silence. You have to do it with complete patience. It's like when you see those pictures of like wizards, or they show someone, he's always an old man, he has a robe, he's in a room, he's in there by himself. Is one man, one candle, studying one book. There's not like 25 different people inside of there. You know what I mean? There's not. Now he may have an apprentice, but the apprentice is going and go gathering wood so he can come back and build a fire. You know what I mean? So it's not in the apprentice only learns by observation. I heard I went to a seminar one time, and the guy said that in Africa, no one learns in Africa by asking a question. They always learn by observing. You especially if you're young, you're basically, the best way to learn is to sit back and observe. And then that's when you will gain the truth of what you have accumulated by observation. So all the accumulation one day leads you to a maturity level that you can then begin to ask questions. And just because you ask a question doesn't mean that you're going to get an answer right away. So you have to have you have to have a maturity level to even comprehend and understand that. So it's just all particular levels and stages. The more that that we can go and study what we're studying, it's just going to reveal and open more levels of ourselves, that's going to parallel levels of ourselves that we have to understand and we have to study. So the best thing a person can do is to basically put their emotional self And emotion just doesn't mean that, you know, happy or sad. It's just meaning emoting. It's mean putting under submission the energy that goes into motion within yourself that causes a reaction. So once we place that under submission, then we'll be able to be a wise judge that can sit on the throne of Bina with divine understanding of all things.
Hell yeah.
There is a saying in Yoruba that says "Eshinwaju ni tẹ̀yìn wò sáré," which means the horse actually looks at the one in front of it to get in line of the race. So basically, observation, like you're saying.
Yes.
That's the it says "Eshinwaju ni tẹ̀yìn wò sáré." Let me find a great translation of that for you. So carry on. I'll find the translation, because I understand exactly what you're saying with the comparison that you used for a horse follows the example of the one before it in a race. Eshinwaju ni tẹ̀yìn wò sáré, Yoruba expression, owe. So I know my grandma always said that all the time. Whenever I made an error or something, and my mom was like really scolding me too much, and she's like, "How do you want him to be better when look at the elder ones set the example? So you should know you already made an error somewhere, so he's going to commit the same one." But after a while, there's also something that it says, "Toba biye wa tunra ebi." That means you are born, but it's up to you to rebirth yourself. And that's basically finding yourself, accepting that you're different from every other person. It's your responsibility. So a lot of times, the African proverbs, they really hold a lot of truth into them.
Right.
And like he said, it's about really observation.
Right. You learn those things from observation. You master yourself. You see these flaws. You want to get better, but how can you do it if you're constantly running your mouth? You know what I'm saying? Getting all up in all kind of business and shit. You got to stop, pay attention, observe, and then realize what's the next step. Get them damn emotions.
You know, as you studying the psychology part of this thing, you know, once we get to, if you really want to delve into it, men don't even develop as fast as women do.
If so they do it all.
We know that there's particular. That's why we commit errors through the tree with being a toxic expression of particular aspects of the tree, because we haven't reached a particular maturity level. So even with, like I said, with the Hebrews or the Hebraic culture of only getting the Kabbalah, first it's not given to you through writing, it's given to you through oratory. You have to have the maturity to sit there and listen to stories so that you can decipher what's being said. But if you haven't reached an anatomical maturity level in your brain yet, you're not going to be able to funnel that type of information. So if you look at it from a scientific point of view, there's particular parts of the male human brain that doesn't even mature until he's 20, 23 years old. So that's why a certain particular information can't be given during that time, because it's not going to be even understood by certain peoples unless you have unless you're around those who are very wise and spiritually in tune and grounded and will be able to give you the proper fruit from the root of the tree.
Woo! I don't have the maturity to sit down and listen to a 9-hour Panic video, a 6-hour Bobby video, a 4-hour Travis video. Let me go run off and catch that young Pharaoh.
Because he gonna cuss and he gonna speak to my emotional self.
There you go.
and fire me up. and I'm gonna like that more than I'm gonna have to listen to Bobby go through 10 different books and say, hold up, I know I got the paper here. I know I got it here somewhere. First of all, let's pour libation. I forgot to pour libation. Nobody, half of these people who don't have that maturity level, they're not with that. Let alone going to read the book that he's gonna tell you about. And sometimes when you get with panic because of the teacher can ruin the lesson if they don't have a refined teaching method. And
True.
I'm not saying you got that. I'm not trying to crap on the teaching method, but you have to have a teacher or an educator. You do have to have some type of a teaching protocol.
Yeah.
You're always in this fire element, so to speak, I'll say. You're gonna burn the student. They're not gonna want to sit there and listen to that over. They might as well go up to the avenue and chill out with their homeboys and build all day long. So you got to have some sort of refinement in that study. And just like you said, some people don't have the maturity, and I usually call it mental stamina. They don't have the mental stamina to take a 5-hour lecture, sitting down listening to that. And you got people who lie nowadays and say they do.
Yep.
And they don't even take notes. There's no way that you can listen to somebody speak for that long without taking notes about what they're saying. Your mind is not even that well built to go home and remember all the important parts of what you just heard.
That's wild. And I watch people on the internet that interact me, not in a stalker way, but just in paying attention to interactions with specific individuals. And I'll see some people post about not watching these long ass lectures. I'm saying, have you read this book? No. And then come back with posts like, y'all think that just reading books is gonna save you. It ain't about the books. The book is just another man's interpretation. Where it's like, you're just saying that because you don't have the, like you said, mental stamina to sit down and actually read a book. It's not that the books don't have the info. You literally don't know because you haven't read one.
I've had people tell me they tap directly into the Akasha level and they just download.
Oh yeah, I've heard that one.
Like, what?
Yeah, I heard that one too. Yeah, I just tapped into the Akashic. Not saying these things aren't possible, but I'm gonna wager 99% of the time these folks are not actually doing that.
They are not tapping into the Akasha. You have to be built. First of all, if you come into contact with somebody who's getting direct information from the Akasha, just coming into their presence, you're going to vibrate with that and get some information from the Akasha. Because obviously, this is not a normal person.
True, very true. Which means by default, your life reflects the fact that you're getting downloads from the Akasha.
You're never going to be the same again.
That is the story of my life. So, and that's how I found myself on Travis's page, because I was getting information left, right, and center, and I couldn't make sense of it. And when you're deeply programmed in different other stuff, you're thinking to yourself, what is this person saying? And, why are they getting donations? And then you're also at the same time reading comment sections. But at that point, something in you would definitely tell you, when you're listening to the right station, that the information you're getting is developing something in you. So it's asking for you to concretize it, to make it much more solid. And then when I discovered Travis's page, it's just like it correlates with what X is saying. From Travis's page, now you get into reading books, and then you find out that the information that you get from A is the same information that you get from B, is the same information that you get from C, which shows you that the initial information that you were getting, maybe you didn't, that person's technique wasn't to break it down in the pattern that we use over here. Like you're saying, someone like, if you're listening to like Young Pharaoh, or you're listening to any other awakened soul whose mission is to educate, they have different patterns, but it's still the same language. Now, your own adaptability is for you to, is however you are, your own person depends on your adaptability. If the person uses curse words during the time is expressing himself, fine. If you want to be with the ones that do their teachings in midst of candles and sage, fine. Your individuality is what is going to help you to filter it out, and then you take what resonates and leave the rest. Because for you to have grabbed the information in the very first instance, then that means you were vibrating at a particular level, not totally dense.
And I respect them brothers. I actually like Panic, and I like Brother Pharaoh. It's not that I don't have anything against him. It's just that you know, it's just like I like what I like. You know what I'm saying? I don't need them to teach me anything. One time and this is why I say that, you know what I'm saying, that you have to be cautious of how you teach. Pharaoh did a presentation on why the woman is God or something like that.
Because she is.
And I listened to it, and I said, man, this dude is actually dropping some real gems. I wanted my daughter to watch it, but it was cussing so much in it, I couldn't let her watch it.
But you do know, Django, you do know that the part about you that triggers you about the cussing is something you have to deal with, right? Because that's a particular level of consciousness that you've not come to terms with.
No, I'm good with it. I just don't want it programming into my daughter. You understand what I'm saying?
I get you.
Yeah. Her finding this information, being so young, and with it being like the first time her hearing it's liable to leave an emotional impact on her. And with the deep cussing and the language put in there as well, that's going to be attached to that deep programming.
Yeah, I understand.
Anything that leaves an emotional imprint, whatever things surrounded that imprint, you're going to associate it with it. So it could be potentially, you know, quote unquote damaging.
You know, even
anyway, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I've not met one single soul that is awake. I've seen. Listen, I've come across 80-year-olds, 70-year-olds, 21-year-olds. There's not one single soul right now on this planet that is awake, that is manifesting their own reality, that is doing great stuff in true light, that isn't studying what we are studying. So
amen.
That there's not one single one. I was listening to a 67-year-old woman yesterday, and you know, it's just like everyone with their own timing of when their bulb comes on into light, but this is it. So
hey, my current mentor that I'm studying right now, like I said, we're talking about psychology. This man dropping occult science. First, he got tetragrammaton written on the chalkboard in the back, but no mention of it. Later on in the program, he's talking about the founders of this program have heavily studied Hermetics and Kabbalah. Later on, he's talking about Kabbalistic references and all this shit, knowing damn well nobody in the audience knows what he's talking about. But I'm like, holy shit. So you telling me that even psychology is founded on Hermetics and the Kabbalah? So yeah, like you said, anyone who's really making moves out here, they're studying the science to some degree.
The original psychologist in ancient times was the alchemist, was the hermeticist, was the one who was grounded in arcane sciences. They went to them. Whatever the title of the mystic or whatever you want to call them, the person who was the one to tell you about the spirit energy of an individual, that quote unquote was the psychiatrist or the psychologist. Then eventually, as we go through time, you know, it just the information shifted on purpose or whether not on purpose, so it can be easily digested by the masses of individuals. Now we know there's individuals who don't want people to know about certain things, so they'll change one name into another name. You know, because when you really study or you take the movement of the stars and the personalities of the stars, and then you take that and you study the personalities of the brain and the movements of thought in the brain. That's the same thing as the movements of the stars. So the parallel between that is basically the very same thing. It's just called psychiatry, and that's why a person like Dr. Freud. I mean, not Freud. Well, he was important, but I'm talking about Dr. Jung. He was very important when it came to putting both of those back together, the occult arcane information with psychology. He's the one that brought that back into the mainstream. But even the mainstream covers him up, and then they try to discredit a lot of his stuff and stuff like that. But those who can see beyond that understand, like, okay, he was the one that was bringing this stuff back together for modern time.
Right. Psychologists, the original psychologists were the occultists. And there's a member of the Magus Academy. I haven't seen him in quite some time. I want him to come back. I know he went off to do his own studies, but he was very focused on like Plato and Socrates and a lot of these Greek philosophers. And he brought me to the conclusion that all they did was change the name. These people that we used to call philosophers, these Greek philosophers and all that, they were occultists.
Yeah.
All they were talking about was a cult. Like you said, they just changed the name of it.
Yeah.
Jung was a freaking occultist, but he had to understand, he understood that in order for him to teach the masses, you have to kind of reframe it in words that aren't so scary, right? Words that are acceptable to the program that humanity is currently running under.
The only people they take serious in mainstream society who teaches abstract information is the individual who has obtained something from a university, quote unquote, a degree. And you're really going to be accepted to a certain degree if your degree says doctor in front of that thing. So once you become a psychologist, you can now talk to people from an occultic level because it's abstract. You can blend the two together. So if he came as a regular guy as he was and wrote the same books and put out the same information, his books would have fell into obscurity somewhere. You know?
That's why we see a lot of these occult books. If you look at them, it's written by Dr. So-and-so, so-and-so PhD. And at first that used to confuse me. I'm like, well, if this is occult stuff, then why are these, professional people writing these books? But it began to make sense to me. I'm looking here on my bookshelf, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. A lot of these are written by people with PhDs and doctorates and shit like that, because like you said, they know that the world will take them more seriously if they got that clout behind their name, if they got that BINAH symbolism behind their name.
You know how they say you got to give a spoonful of sugar with the medicine. Sometimes the medicine be bitter. You got to sweeten that thing up just a little bit, so it can trick them.
Yeah. And that
everybody don't like black bitter coffee. You got to have some creamer and sugar over there on the side.
That's the West. Yeah, the West. The sugar and the sweetener, that's the PhD and the doctorate. In the East, you got to be that guru.
Bitter is good for your liver, as they say over there in the East.
Bitter is good for your liver.
Over here, well, we're going to add a little bit of high fructose corn syrup to this thing, so you can take it down, and it'll go down very smooth.
Like we were saying earlier, even the honey can make you sick if it's too
Even
much.
the honey can make you sick. And let's not even get into artificial honey that they give you in those little packs at restaurants. That when you read the
Honey
ingredients,
sauce.
it's honey sauce.
Yeah. Honey flavored sauce.
I showed that to my homeboy one day. I was like, "Yo, you think that's honey?" He said, "Man, it is honey, man."
Somebody in the
I
chat living in
ingredient.
the zone said you got to have a degree and a TED Talk.
Exactly. Man, it's crazy. Trav, I got to get out of
That's
here.
what I'm trying to get my TED Talk.
I want to say everybody, I say peace, man. Trav, peace. I gotta head up out of here, man.
Jeez Louise, I didn't even look at the time. All right, bro.
Cheers, Django. Thank you for always.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man.
I
Let's
thank
continue
you.
this.
I'm always appreciative, man. So everybody be easy.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren.
Peace, peace, peace.
Peace.
Be easy, peace. See, once I get on TED Talks, then people will be able to take me serious in the mainstream.
They're not ready for you, man. They'll never.
I'm learning how to sneak in. Aleister Crowley once put, and I see this reflected with everybody that is a famous occultist. Aleister Crowley said, "There's 3 ways that you have to present yourself in order to not be devoured. You have to present yourself as the devil. You have to present yourself as the clown. Or you have to present yourself as if you're insane. If you're able to do those 3 roles, you can get away with teaching the occult without being devoured. Because the 4th option is being the Messiah. And that's one that I knew early on to really not play that role. If you go out as the Messiah, then eventually, by nature, that energy means that you must sacrifice. For someone to go out to present themselves as a devil character, then what's going on is that people already have predisposed in their mind your archetype, right? They know that, oh, that's the opposer, he's a bad guy, I don't trust him. That's the route that Crowley took, the route of the clown. And we see a lot of go on stage while they're making funny jokes, they're also spitting the truth. Bypassing your consciousness. And likewise with the crazy person. And I think a lot of people aren't realizing that that's actually the route that Kanye takes from time to time, right? People mistake the act for the reality. If you notice how Donald Trump behaves, he's sometimes taking that devil role. He sometimes George W. Bush would sometimes play that clown role. People are talking about, oh, how stupid George Bush is. The man was supremely intelligent. All these people are supremely intelligent, but we forget that they're actors as well. Just something to keep in mind. You can't just come straight out here trying to preach. If you take one of those 3 roles, as Crowley has observed, you usually have a longer run. You can do more damage. But yeah, I definitely, if that were to happen to me, I definitely think I'm going through the psychologist route because psychology interests me a whole lot. But yeah, that's the end of that discussion. So I think we pretty much delved deeply into Binah. You guys have any finishing thoughts or any final thoughts about anything?
I want to say coffee beans relate a lot to Binah as well, and why coffee's in the workplace a lot. Just like a side note on that.
Mm-hmm.
Coffee Binahs.
Nice. Coffee Binahs. Coffee Binahs. Black coffee. Binah is black.
There you go.
See?
They're in every workplace where you got to do long hours.
That's the Chronos aspect. That's also the establishment aspect of Binah.
Ooh. Yeah, nice discussion. I'm going to head out too.
All right. Looks like I just received a box from Amazon full of books that I've decided to no longer share on the internet.
Uh-oh.
More books. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, more
I
books.
saw a lot of books myself too. I'm so reading that. I'm like, oh, more books.
What's up, Veronica?
Nothing. Just listen to you guys. I'm like, oh, more books. You mentioned more books. I was yesterday, 2 days ago, I was like, no more books. And then I was like, ooh, I'm interested in this one. Ooh, I'm gonna get this one. Oh my God, I was like, stop ordering books, but oh my God, I am so load of books, yeah. But I'm reading the books though. Not that I'm just buying and not reading. I'm reading the books.
Right, right.
Aristocrat is one of the books that I got.
Okay.
Yeah, I had that one, but I've been reading the one that you told me for the cards, to understanding the cards.
Mm-hmm.
With the Kabbalah. And also I've been reading, oh my God, of course I've been reading the Dion, but I kind of like translated it now in Spanish because it's a little, I think the mixing of the two languages, I think it's like mixing the Jewish names and then the English, kind of like I get a little off. So now it's like, okay, you know what? Let me just translate this into Spanish, and I'm reading right now in Spanish. Pretty much, I think I got it a little bit better. I'm not missing the information that I need to be, that I think I'm missing that I'm reading in English. I was like, that's it. So now I'm getting in everything in Spanish. But yeah, but pretty much I'm reading. I really do read. And of course, my practice is always, you know, mantras every night. And I've been a little bit behind on the other one with the Hermetic, but so far I try to go slower with the mantras and meditations and stuff like that. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But yes, of course, reading, it's very, it's something that I've been doing this whole weekend. Like Saturday, yesterday, I read long hours. I ended by 11 o'clock at night. The one way that I trying to memorize my own cards is like trying to like entertain myself in a picture. Like I picture somebody and I'm throwing the cards and I'm like, all right, let me see about this person. So I'm throwing the cards and then I read the cards and then I was like, okay, so this is what I see on that person. So it's quite interesting. So that's the only way that I can memorize those cards. Me just reading the cards just like that, reading, it's just not gonna work. So I threw the cards out, like, you know, like I showed the cards up there. I'm not even doing like you guys, you know how you guys do break down your cards, the past, present, and future. You have like the cross of St. John's cross. I don't even know the names. Like they have different ways how you do your cards. I not even go to that yet. I just go to like the past, present, and future type of cards. And that's how I learn in my cards, literally. And I memorizing everything on the cards themselves. So yeah, I'm getting. Psyche wise, guys, yes. I seen a little bit more psyche. I see things. I'm not saying that I see shadows, dark stuff, and I just see somebody and I can see something about that person. Like with you, for example, I was just mentioned to you from the beginning, psychology is something that it would fit you in pretty well. I don't know, but I'm just saying that. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you.
Nice.
Yeah. And then when it becomes with teaching, you guys were talking about teachers and you have to have a specific structure. That is true. You have to have a structure, but also you have to be an entertainer, believe it or not. Like
absolutely. Absolutely.
You have to know your concepts, right? You are literally the leadership of the group. So if you come there and, you know, and just like sit and let the students talk, it's like, oh my God, you know, it becomes also boring. But in the way that I see the structure with my students is I make them read the books while we are, especially in Zoom. Like literally I grab the book and I call a person's name and I ask them to read a paragraph. And then you literally ask them what's their thought about those paragraphs. And also, of course, you have to be an entertainer, because just putting the thoughts about it, it's gonna make everybody else get bored. But for us, it's like, I had to entertain them, make jokes about it, make stories about it. Believe me, I have students ask me questions for 45 minutes and everybody's interacting and everybody's asking all these questions. But that's because you literally become an entertainer and you let them relax, where they ask all these questions. And this is how they can determine if you are a good teacher or if you're not a good teacher. Now, as a teacher, also, I would tell you this: a lot of the students, when they're going back to school, they talk bad things about you, or they talk good things about you. And teacher understand teacher. So the teachers, we communicate to each other and we say, you know, you need to change this, or you need to change that. You need to change this, you need to switch that. It is not about us attacking each other. It's just that when the students are talking to other teachers, they are feel more free to communicate and say whatever they feel and expressing themselves to other teachers. Students also will get attached to you, right? Students will not look for another teacher at this point. Like for me right now, I'm not interested to look in any other teachers for occults, and that's it. Right now, that's it. I don't want to be looking for other people. Because when I try to look for other people, it just doesn't look like it's rational, you know, like it's just not logic. It's all like mystical and spiritual, mystical, that to me does not click. So I was like, okay, so I think that for right now, I'm just gonna stick around to what Travis can teach. And I'm going to learn whatever I need to learn from his mind. I know he's kind of like a psychologist. I knew from the beginning. I knew this. I knew this.
The jig is up. I've been exposed.
Yes, you have. You just, your energy is being like freely open. I don't know, call me crazy, but that's what I think it is. So then I was like, okay, so I'm stick around with him. Of course, I have a friend that she's actually she's a, what do you call it, a pre-med, but she's not as much as exposed as the way that you are. So, you know, teacher, it's a very, it's a gift. It really is. I must say it's a gift. So yeah. The PH books that you guys are talking about, writing about books, or books with the PH. Of course, even in science itself, like just say if I want to do a research, my research is not going to be as valid as much as an MD research, right? So for me to do research, I have to actually use a doctor because he has a fancy medical degree as a PH. So your education is also very valuable for you to write these books. And funny enough, as I tell you guys before, science and magic are linked together. It's just gonna happen. And just the difference is that science, we use logic, and magic in a certain way, not the whole time. They use more mystical and spiritual setting. So that's the one difference from both of us. But you know, it's been there for a long time.
Awesome. One thing about the tarot, honestly, I know I took a break from actually focusing on them as reading tools, and right now I'm just focused on really diving into the meanings behind them all, so that when I go back to actually doing the readings, I'll have a deeper connection to how it actually relates, you know. But yeah, you sound like me, full-time research.
Yeah, and also grading system, Travis. As I text you yesterday, teachers grade. I'm like, you have to grade me because I did a reading, guys, and then I text Travis and I was like, you have to grade me between 1 to 100. What's my average grade? So.
Oh yeah. I just went to sleep when you sent that.
So I was like, grade me. So grades are also good, you know, And most of the students, we always worry about, you know, what's the average, how do we do it in the classroom? You know, your evaluation is very important because you are the teacher. So I was like, all right, let me just text Travis and see what's my average grade. I mean, I've been a student for so long, guys. You know, it's just the way for me. Sorry.
Nice, nice. For those of you who are still here, I've got one tip that's helped me as far as reading. I got one of these little clickers. Hold on. Just right here that you can kind of just click, you know, and it might tell you, I think they're originally used for like what lap you're on or whatever. But I use this after I read a page, and that helps me to keep on task, keep track. I found that since I've been using it, I've been reading more pages per day.
Oh, so you mean like the timing?
No, the little clicker, like, you know, you click it and it adds a number to the counter, click counter.
Oh,
You found on Amazon for like $5.
that's a skill for reading fast.
Yeah, I'm usually using it just to keep track because they say what is measured is managed. So, but I use it to help me keep track of how many pages I read in a day. And then when I saw my first number, I was like, well, damn, I ain't reading shit. Let me try to go for 100 pages a day. So I noticed the first day I read 20 more pages than I usually read. Today I plan on reading even more.
Right.
I'd like to get to 100 pages a day.
Well, the one technique I learned is follow your fingers. I mean, I know that it's like a first grade. I think on first grade, you know how children get to read with their fingers up, right? I don't know if you guys do that when you read, but that's another way for you to learn how to read faster. If you follow your fingers while you're reading, that will help you out also because your eyes actually follow your finger, and at the same time it follows the speed of the finger and it follows the speed of your reading. And eventually when you realize you are going to be reading more faster because you're training your visualization, you're training it to read more faster. So I mean, I saw a book that this guy, he was a very fast reader, and that's the first thing that he say. If you want to start learning read faster, you start it with your fingers, and along the road, your eyes are going to be adapted, and then you'll be able to read more faster. All the things that they say is just read what it interests you or what you think is important, because to be honest, it's like if you read word by word, you're actually going to be lost yourself in the reading, and you are going to be missing the important things on the book. So all the people say read the top paragraph from the beginning paragraph and then read the end of the paragraph, because at the end of the day, the top paragraph is the most important thing of the writer, and then the conclusion obviously comes at the end of the paragraph. So you know, the stuff like that can help out big time.
Yeah, and for me, it's not necessarily for speed. You know, I don't want to reach 100 pages a day just to say I did it. Like, I really want to have comprehension of the words too. So I do read slow, maybe compared to somebody else, but that's because I'm really trying to digest this thing so I don't have to read it again. And I also take notes. You know, sometimes I'm writing down my paraphrasing of the whole page. So I found that also leads to why I don't read as much as I'd like to, but I'm trying to develop a process for myself so that I can maximize my reading, so I can read more and also remember what I'm reading.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you know, with getting distracted and shit, I'm finding that I actually do have to leave my phone downstairs because somebody will message me and I'll go to answer it, and an hour later I'm getting off of Instagram. You know,
it's another thing, distraction. Absolutely.
somebody sent me in the DMs this thing that they have on Amazon. It's like a cookie jar with a timer. And basically you put your phone in there and you set a timer, and you literally can't, the jar doesn't open until the timer's off. That sounds like a pretty cool idea. I might have to try that out.
Check that out.
Put my phone in there.
Yeah.
Set it for like an hour. I guess since we're on that topic, I also found an app, you guys may have heard of it or not, it's called Forest. And basically you plant a seed and you set a timer, maybe 60 minutes or whatever, and the seed grows into a full tree. And if you leave that app, the tree will die. So that kind of That's been helping me also. I don't want to kill the tree, so I stay focused on the phone.
Nice. Those are techniques, man. That's a psychology techniques.
Right, right. I love it. I might even do a little course about speed reading and retaining what you've read, but that'll be later. I have a lot of ideas for different courses to do, but right now I want to study and learn before I start to teach. There's a lot of
Exactly.
people on the internet who try to teach before they actually learn it. It's crazy, but it happens.
Well, there is courses up there that you can look it up for reading, for fast reading. There's been courses up there. Yeah, I just started with this. That's a good way to do it.
But yeah, speaking of which, I think it's about time for me to get back to my studies. I'm going to make a new syllabus calendar thing because now I'm behind on Initiation of Hermetics because I'm busy reading Richard Bandler books. But yeah, I'll put up in the syllabus. So next week we can cover step 5 in Initiation to Hermetics and Chesed in Mystical Kabbalah.
Chesed it is.
Chesed.
Oh my God.
Chachma and Chesed.
I got some books on psychology, Trav, if you want to check them out.
Oh boy. I want to say no because I
I
don't have
don't know
time.
if I want to. I don't know if I want to put them on the chat or on the live feed.
Okay, I'm definitely gonna hit you up about that.
Yeah, I got a few of them. I actually started with
I will tell you this straight, Charles.
psychology.
Get yourself full certified.
All right. So one more time, anybody else? Rodolfo, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Trav. I had a long night, so I was just kind of listening more today.
I got you.
I was listening to something that I think that you might find interesting since you're studying psychology. It's not necessarily directly psychology, but it was one of like the world premier scientists on our nervous system, and he specializes in connecting the eye to the brain. And basically he also focuses in like neuroplasticity. So like I know earlier we were talking about learning, so like neuroplasticity would obviously help us learn faster and more comprehensive. But he was mentioning that you can trigger, and it's so crazy because it gets into the above and below as above and below thing. But he was saying like let's say I start let's say I'm in a excited state, like I'm a boxer or something and I'm about to fight. You can consciously do certain breathing patterns to trick your nervous system to release dopamine, and then you instantly create like a flow state. It was insane. Like they're
Wait, say that
working
again?
on, so like let's say you're excited for whatever reason, like your heart is pumping, you have adrenaline pumping. There's certain breathing techniques that you can do to trigger dopamine in that instance. So like obviously like adrenaline is the upper, you put the dopamine down the downer, and then you create you like artificially induce a flow state. And then his research is basically like different mind body states and how to trigger them basically at will to higher your performance and anything like learn like it's focused around neuroplasticity, so making you smarter, but obviously that would literally help you in everything.
Is that the one?
It very much sounds like what I'm getting into. Very much.
It's really interesting. Like, yeah, it's super interesting. There's another one there, like, and the crazy thing is they'll start talking about breathing, like literally breathing, and how like some people figured out how to breathe. Like they'll go into like the top of a mountain naked with snow everywhere and literally start sweating based on like breathing techniques they figured out.
Franz Barton.
And it's insane. It's absolutely insane. I'm like, how do you guys know about this? And you guys are all literally back to the PhD thing. Like, you guys are literally scientists.
Good temperature in there. And that's what I'm finding as I'm studying the psychology stuff. I'm seeing the parallels between Hermetics and Kabbalah, and it's making me really think that this all has a common root. It really has a common root. As Shango said, like the original psychologists were occultists. How is it
Yeah.
that the people in India, they already know this shit? All these little scientific discoveries we got, the ancient people knew this in great detail. The Western man is just, you know.
It's insane because I feel like I would be less likely to understand like that scientist when he was speaking if I didn't know occult stuff.
Yeah. Right.
Like I forgot the word he used, but like I instantly understood it. Like, you need to do this until you get it into your subconscious. And I'm like, oh, like, well, he didn't say that, but that's basically what he was saying. Like, your nervous system eventually creates these patterns. So like, you just need to like interrupt it a little. It's insane. I'm gonna send you the interview. It's pretty long. But you know, you just listen to it in the back or whatever at 1.5 speed, and just check it down.
What's the name of the books, Rodolfo?
It's an interview. It's I forgot his name. I'm gonna look it up right now, but it's basically Joe Rogan. I mean, I don't know how you feel about him, but he basically invited this dude on to figure out how to become a better athlete, and he was just saying crazy stuff about our nervous system.
Wow, yeah, I can imagine. That's cool.
Look up his name.
Jay, what's up?
And I'm sorry. I was gonna say, Travis, I'm gonna send you this link to a website where it's basically, it lets you make your own online course, and you can literally just pump out online courses of anything you want, like nonstop.
Oh boy.
I guess more books, Travis. More books. I love it. I love it.
Jeez Louise, man. It's like, holy shit. I have to treat initiation and mystical Kabbalah like my main course meal. And then the other ones are like snacks and desserts and shit. Because otherwise, it's like I get so wrapped up in the other stuff that, it's cool though. I love it. I love it. What is the alternative? You know, me fucking off, wasting time?
Not really. There's not such thing as wasting time reading books.
I found his name. So it's Joe Rogan. He's interviewing Andrew Huberman. You could find that on YouTube, and like it just gets crazy because you can tell Rogan is just trying to like get better at being an athlete, and this dude is just telling him like, dude, you can be in, like, after their research, you can like be in any state you want to be.
You say Andrew Rubin?
Huberman. So it's Huberman.
It's 5 o'clock.
Thanks, Maxine. Oh, sweet.
All right, guys, I gotta hit the road. I gotta study myself too. I gotta go and get some books done as well. I'll get to see you on Thursday.
All right.
Bye, Veronica.
Take care, guys.
It was good to hear you. You made me stay because I was about to leave and you started speaking and I was just like, okay, I got to listen to you. I can't not listen to you. You have that thing.
Yes, the teaching talking. Yes, I know. All
right.
See you later.
See you Thursday. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
I'm gonna head out too. So thanks. Have a good afternoon or evening. What time it is now?
2300.
501, like the Star Force Imperial Force.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, take care, Josh.
Take it easy.
Peace, peace. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Interestingly enough, the TK part of TK Trav comes from Star Wars and the 501st Imperial Legion. All of the original clones of the Stormtrooper Legion that supported Darth Vader, their prefix was all TK. So there was like a TK 501, TK 444, TK 789. Since my name is Travis, I took the persona of TK Trav.
That was pretty cool. I didn't even realize that. Do you prefer TK Trav or Magus?
Well, what I find is that through each one of my phases, the way that I keep up with them is that I rename myself. I mean, apparently that's a Gemini quality. So I'm currently in the carnation of Travis Magus. And it's already beginning to change into something else as I develop the, I mentioned before about Crawley and those three personas. I think that I'm testing out the three of them to see which one I can flow with best, but probably Travis Magus at this point. TK Trav was mostly when I was doing rap type music.
Nice. I sent you over the links.
Yes. Yeah, I just added you.
Nice. You could, yeah. I really think you can coach like athletes or anyone who would need cognitive improvement. Like not even like, I mean, psychology. Yeah, that'll just, like you said, that just get you in the door everywhere. But like any human being can benefit from this. Even animals, I think, anything with a consciousness can benefit.
Wow. Damn, that just put a whole new perspective on like veterinarians and people who do spiritual work with animals.
I mean, the dog. I mean, I look up. The dogs definitely have feelings, like without a doubt. Cats, I feel like cats might be more. I don't even know. Cats, I feel like they're more mature emotionally than we are sometimes, but definitely
Yeah.
dogs have emotions. Travis, what's the I don't mean to hold you, but what's the next book that we're reading after these two?
Oh, still deciding. Still deciding. It'll come up when it's time, but what a tough choice, tough call. Holy shit. But I definitely think it's going to be something that's a little bit lighter. I think this is pretty heavy for a lot of people, and for that reason, a lot of people aren't really keeping up. And I understand. So it might be something a little bit lighter that we can get through quicker and is easier to digest.
All right. I like both. I like both.
Then again, you know what I'm saying? It might get more complex. We'll see. We'll see.
I'm excited, man. Thank you.
It came to me before in a dream, but I forgot at this moment. So it's something that would take an understanding of Hermetics and Kabbalah to get into. Damn, I can't remember right now, but of course that's for a reason. All right.
Did you finish those books on meditation?
Which one? Oh, yeah, you're talking about Kundalini Tantra, Dharana Darshan, and
Dharana Darshan. Yeah, I know. I got that book probably shit a few months ago, but I haven't started breaking it down yet. I've been reading, like you said, I've been reading too many things at one time.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to dive into that one, and there was another one. Let me see. Did you get the Ars Vercanis?
That's one that I don't mention, but yes, most definitely.
Oh, my bad, my bad.
No, it's cool. It's cool.
Okay, yeah. Have you you already dove into that one?
Hell yeah. I don't like keeping secrets from people, but there's good reason I don't talk about that one. But let's just say I chose Initiation to Hermetics over that one because Initiation into Hermetics actually has you deal with your own shadow work and your personal shit. Because if you advance and get into this power, without balancing yourself, you'll definitely cause yourself an imbalance. And it's harder to clean up a mess when you're advanced than it is still, you know what I'm saying, beginning.
Okay, I got you.
Darshan, I most certainly, that sounds like a great one to come next, honestly. It breaks down meditation so plain and simple. But yeah, I better get out of here before somebody in the chat asks.
To post that book, yeah.
Shit.
Did you get the books I put up? A matter of fact, you have to send me an email and I'll send them to you.
Okay. Where did you originally send them? Because I'm all over the place.
I posted. I showed it on the video during but I don't think I made it active at fact. So
Okay. Well, if you can, send them to my email, travismagus777 at email.
All right, I got you.
More than likely did, because usually if somebody mentions a book and it's relevant, I go ahead and get it.
Okay, cool.
All right. Was there anybody else that would like to say anything? Dustin, you good? All right. It's been 4 hours, and I think we have beaten the horse. So we're going to wrap it up.
Peace.
This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Peace.